What's up, everybody? We've got a very special stream, special guests. You might have seen him in the past couple of weeks on Charlie Kirk and also on Ben Shapiro. And believe it or not, he's actually only 18 years old. His name is Matt Nuclear. Welcome to the stream, Matt.
Thank you so much for having me. What's up, everybody? I am good to be here. A lot of good things to discuss, good things to get into. Thank you for inviting me on.
Nice, man. Yeah, my pleasure, brother. So we're going to get into a nice, fun clip just to start this out. This is the clip that I think a lot of you got pretty excited about. I know I did, where Matt's talking to an erratic woman on race relations in the United States.
Streets who are committing violent. You can give everyone here like a $50,000 check, especially people that are in the streets who are committing violent crimes consistently. A $50,000 check, it's not going to fix anything. It's not going to increase the median household income in the next 10 years by 10% or 20%. For example, we have the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. We prevented Chinese people from getting citizenship and even entering the country. We discriminated against them and basically put them under apartheid, even here in the United States. Yet they have the highest median household income. How is that possible? How come they don't complain and feel entitled consistently to beg for reparations and beg for this when they are killing each other 90% of the time, which is the rate that Black people kill each other, according to the FBI?
Oh, young Matt.
Yet white people are the oppressors.
I'm not sure where your education came from, but they lied to you.
Stats don't lie, though.
Statistics lie all the time. So let's start there, particularly when the statistics are coming from the sources that gain from the statistics being shown a different way. So if you're going to start your argument on stats don't lie, you've already lost the argument. They lie. They lie all the time. One, comparing Chinese people who are immigrants that made a choice to come to the United States and comparing the continued effort of Black people to ground themselves in a nation that continues to make impediments for them to show and live and exist in their true citizenship is a false equivalency.
I don't believe that happens at all. What? No one here is in.
Are you acting right now? Do you really believe
I'm telling
this?
the truth. There's no systemic racism that I've experienced.
Yeah, a part of me thinks she was just trolling you, man. She's an obnoxious on person. A little.
No, yeah, it's like to her, it's like she's in a debate setting. You're supposed to be, having a conversation with someone who has like opposing views, and she's like, Are you like, acting right now because you disagree with me? And, she freaks out. And if you play the whole thing, she goes on to say that I should treat her as if she was my mother. She calls herself a radical. She acts like one, right? All of those things add up.
All right, about to get back good. I can't wait to hear what you say, bro.
Here in America. What system is racist? I think the only racism we've actually seen recently, systemic racism that we've seen, is the application of systemic racism against white people. The University of Western Washington, for example, has been trying to segregate dormitories using Black-only dormitories because Black people feel safer amongst each other. But they're more likely to kill each other than white people are ever to kill them. That's just the truth. You have King Von rapping about killing other Black men. Why should I think that the white man is the oppressor when Black men are more likely to kill me?
Oh my God, this is scary. You need to think about me as your mama. Do not talk to me in that fashion. So let's check that now.
How you kept calm, bro. How you kept calm.
Oh, right. Again, it's like, in what setting do you believe it's like, especially when something is being broadcasted, it's being recorded, it's pre-recorded, but it's going to get broadcasted for everyone to see. It's going to be posted online. And the way you respond to someone's argument is treat me as if I was your mother because you made an argument. I wasn't rude. You have to understand, when I first sat down to speak to this woman, I complimented her. I shook her hand. I told her my name. Super respectful. And she, she went radical on me like she said she was. She's a radical, acted radical, and that's kind of how they are. So, yeah.
Hey, man, you're very, very mature for 18. Very mature. That men that are my age, 45, there's guys like me that we could not, like, that was impeccable maturity.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
So on a basic level, we have to understand that systemic racism is grounded in the realities that Black people have not been considered an equal human being in this country since its onset. So there's simply no way to make the argument that there isn't systemic racism. And we have seen in very clear ways the system operate in an organically racist way. Do not cut me off.
Oh man. Oh man.
Yeah, it's she's something else. Got to tell you.
So So what do you think in general? So like the floor is yours, man. Now that now that the debate is over, you've seen, you've had a few nights, you've had a couple weeks or whatever it is. How long? When was that filmed?
Well, that was filmed in June, late June. That was specifically filmed, but it dropped, I believe, about 2 weeks ago now. Coming up on 3 weeks. So, yeah, no, it's been a while. It's been a bit since that was filmed. You can tell that my hair is like grown a little bit.
Yeah.
But in general, like, I'm just glad everyone got to see it. I'm glad that, another radical leftist crazy person was exposed for being who they are, not being tolerant of other people's views, acting crazy. And yeah, I mean, generally she's really disrespectful. A person who, again, her qualification. She has a degree from Columbia University, which is an Ivy League school, in African American studies with a specialty in hip hop. Don't forget that. The specialty is in hip hop. So really odd, bizarre person. And she's also apparently a former actress. Again, I never knew of her before I, did the episode. And even after, I was already told her name, like when I did the episode, I forgot her name after I left the studio because she was really irrelevant. But yeah, fun experience.
So let me ask you, man, I feel like you have a great attitude. I'll tell you, full disclosure, I'm biased, man, because I grew up with a good friend of mine. I've known since I'm 45. I've known him since I was 13. He's Nigerian, and he's very successful. And he graduated from college. He went to an elite school on a football scholarship. Now he's a successful entrepreneur. He has an innovative tech company in the Washington, D.C. area. And he's definitely influenced me a lot. Then I have another friend of mine who's successful. He came out of Virginia. And he's like more traditional, I would say, American culture. And both of them just have very, very opposing views. So I'm just curious. So I ask you, I want to know what you think here. And it's because I have African friends, and then I have American friends that whose ancestors are from Africa. And I feel like there's the view is it's not the same. And in some respects, I feel like you're more like my African friend, but I don't know. So I'm just curious to ask you, if America, to her point, if America is systematically racist, okay, would you say that it's fair that Black immigrants from Africa and maybe the Caribbean statistically outperform Black Americans in income and education?
Well, they do, especially Nigerian immigrants in the United States. They do outperform Black Americans, and there is a different cultural difference, like perspective and cultural difference. There definitely exists one. I believe African immigrants to the United States are more grateful. We understand where it comes. We understand how it feels to come from Western Sub-Saharan Africa. We understand the corruption. We understand the living conditions. So when we come to a country like America, we're grateful, right? That's my parents taught me to be grateful to be here. Not to, disrespect the country or go against the country. It's a privilege to be in the United States. I know a lot of leftists tend to believe that it's some sort of a right to be here, but it's a privilege, which is why, millions of people have, breached into the country just to get in, have broken our immigration laws just to get in because it's such a privilege to be here. And a lot of Black Americans, they tend to have this perspective of entitlement. Not all of them, obviously. There's ones who don't have the entitlement perspective, like Thomas Sowell, Ben Carson, and so on, like even Coleman Hughes. But many of them have this sense of entitlement where they hate America. It's so awful. And it's a horrible country. It's evil. And they're of desperate need of reparations, as if it's going to like long-term change their current, area economically, culturally, and so on. And a lot of like foundational Black Americans, just like herself. It's one thing to say that there's issues with the system, which I don't really believe exist in reference to racism, systemic racism, and also say that we need to handle things in group. This woman came out and said, like a few days after the release of the video, that Black on Black crime just doesn't exist. It's a made up invention. And I'm like, what is going on? So yeah. It's a sense of like lack of responsibility. Be ashamed for once. You're still begging for reparations. Like the Chinese went through the Chinese Exclusion Act, like I mentioned. They went through the Rock Springs massacre where Chinese miners were massacred. Why don't they bring that up? Because you move on. Everyone has went through something. The Jewish people have went through something. 6 million of them were unalived. The Armenians went through a genocide. You can't act as if you're the only group in the world that has ever been like oppressed before in the past. Move on and improve yourself. Okay. Don't be a victim forever. For example, the Indians, they went through colonization by the British. Indian Americans make the most amount of money here in America. You have to be able to move on. You can't cry and mention the transatlantic slave trade forever. Not to mention that the only reason why it was possible was because black slave owners in Western Sub-Saharan Africa were selling black people off to the Europeans. By the way, I'm just curious, are they going to ask for reparations for the countries like modern-day Benin, modern-day Congo, modern-day Angola? Because the rulers didn't want to end this transatlantic slave trade. They loved it. The British had to patrol the coast and convince them to stop the slave trade because the African rulers were enriching themselves. When is BLM going to call for reparations from those modern day countries who sold off their people, which is why they're in North America today?
Let me ask you, and I know we're later, everyone, just so you know, we're going to get into the Russian propaganda of what was basically the root of how Yasser Arafat and some of the Palestinian movement got rooted with the African American community and the struggles that they were having several decades back. And but before we get into that, why do you think that in the hearts, let's say, of Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, who is a great American hero, who is someone I admire a lot. Right. I think people on the right and left American admire him. I think he's sort of a bipartisan American hero. You know, he's through and through American hero. But why do you think civil rights leaders like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King were hand in hand with Jewish communities? In the earlier decades, like the 60s, 70s, around
because Jewish people Jewish people stood alongside them, right? You have to understand that we had Martin Luther King, who marched with Rabbi Abraham, right? He marched with him. He was at the Rabbinical Assembly days before he was unalived. Jewish people participated in uplifting, Black Americans and stood with them in solidarity. Helped in terms of legality, helped in terms of law. And many of the racist signs would not just say no blacks. It would also include no Jews, because Jewish people were also discriminated here in the United States, although that's, undermined. And so it would make sense that two actual oppressed people would stand with each other. Again, during those times, right? It makes sense that you can say that you're oppressed prior to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by Lyndon B. Johnson. But after that, after you're given all of the rights in the world, all of the subsidies in the world, you can't be oppressed forever. But yeah, of course, it made sense that two oppressed people at a time would align themselves together and work together.
I'll be honest with you, man. As a Jewish man myself, I'm mixed. So I'm similar to like a white black man in the middle in the American South, because my father's side, they're Iranian. Okay, they fled Iran. They were Muslims, and on my mother's side, I'm Jewish. I'm a Jewish man. My family from Jerusalem. All right. So I'm mixed Israeli, Iranian. You could imagine. However, the majority of Iranians actually want peace with Israel. It's not, the Iranian regime does not represent the majority of the Iranian people. Now, that said,
but the IRGC,
I could tell you've studied this quite a bit, and I respect that. The thing is, man, I think a lot of Jewish men like myself, who, my high school sweetheart, man, was half black, half white. I loved, I was so influenced by African American culture, man. I truly was. Several of my closest friends are African American, and I felt like I defended so much I was so much supportive of African Americans, of their civil rights, and I think a lot of Jewish people were. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think a lot of Jewish people were supportive of African Americans, of women, of even homosexuals. I think that we've been very, very supportive of other communities. And now, after October 7, to see how all these other minority groups in the United States, some of them have completely abandoned us, man. Right. And I do believe to some extent that it's a slippery slope. Once you start, this, for example, when Nick Fuentes is focusing so much on the Jews, like, okay, fine, let's say the Jews are gone. But when you hear what he talks about with the blacks, the women, it's not like next the Indians. It's not like next what comes up is the blacks are holding hands with Nick Fuentes, and the women have equal rights, and the Indians are having a fun party in the United States. No, it's
Right.
very dark. It is dark what he's suggesting, and I will say, yeah, man, because I say this literally to my best friend, man. I'm like, hey, man, so many Jewish people. Yeah, and I'm not a Bernie supporter, but one of the pictures I respect of him was when he got arrested. He got arrested defending, I think, an African-American girl, college girl, man. I mean, and I'm not a communist. And I do not. And I think he does a lot of bad. Definitely not supporting Bernie, but I remember seeing that picture. And there were so many stories of Jewish people who went hard, American South against the KKK, defending the black man.
Right.
So it does feel like a sense of betrayal. So I think when I see someone like you or Officer Tandem or Mr. Washington, I think he's a pastor. When I see guys like you, I'm like, man, at least some people at least didn't forget us,
Right. No, for sure. It has a lot of things. It has a lot to do with a lot of people not understanding history. It's not even just black people, just a lot of white people not understanding what happened throughout history. And yeah, you're supposed to reciprocate love. You're supposed to reciprocate and support for those who support you or for those who supported you. Many black people tend to be aligned with not even just liberal ideology, but leftist ideology specifically, socialism, Marxism type of stuff, which everyone who calls themselves a socialist or a Marxist tends to kind of be on the pro-Palestine side. And so they forget what has happened throughout history. They forget the historical events or any of these things, which is not surprising. It's unfortunate, though. We hope that, black people start to understand what the actual true issue is.
And then, so what would you say to someone that says like that's an African American that's blaming the Jews, and let's say they say, yeah, let's get rid of the Jews. Do you think, what would you say if they think like it's going to be hunky dory, like it's just going to be holding hands with Nick Fuentes? Like what do you envision as the next step? What would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them like get rid of the Jews, and what are the problems that are going to be fixed for the black community? Like what's gonna like be fixed out of genuine curiosity? Because I mean, if you that's the thing is that like people blame Jewish people for all of their problems. I mean, they kind of like are now going in between. They're now going in between both now. At one point, it was the white man that was the oppressor, and the white man holding them back. And until now, it really still is. And now they're kind of changing it to the Jewish man. And again, blaming hasn't worked when it came to the white man. So I don't know why it would work for the Jewish man, which is what I would tell them. So the idea that it's going to all of a sudden fix all of the problems, fix all of the crime in the black community is silly. The Jewish people are not the reason why you're causing crime in your communities. They're not the reason for gang culture. They're not the reason for King Von. They're not the reason for Sexy Red. They're not the reason why black children are listening to this degenerate music. They're not the reason for any of these things. Okay, so I would just tell them that nothing's going to change unless you do your own actions. It's easier to blame external factors that you make up, but it's not as easy to actually look into the issues inside your community and fix them instead of blaming random groups.
It's interesting, man. And this is anecdotal information. I married a German woman, and in 2020, I went and got a home in Germany. Okay. I'm clearly, I'm a dark guy myself, so I'm not German by any stretch of the means. So I went out there, and occasionally I'd see an African. I wouldn't see an African much, not nearly like I do in the United States in Miami, not anywhere close. I'm from Atlanta. So you could, and I've spent a lot of years, most of my years were in New York and DC area where it's a lot of African Americans. So in Germany, man, I barely saw any, barely like where I'm at, it's not that many. And when I would see them, I'm telling you, if you ever come out to Northwest Germany, it's just like another world. Because when I see Africans there, it's like and this is generalization, but the personality is like collectively is completely something else. Because a lot of those Africans that come to Germany, where I'm at, they're straight up engineers.
Right.
So it's like they're coming from Africa. They're literally like engineering students rather.
Right.
And their mindset and the way they are, it's if now in Germany, what I see as violent, it's not like what you see in the United States, where you might see guys from the Middle East who might come to the United States and they're educated because that was required for them to get a entry into the United States. In Europe, the Middle Eastern guys, if I see a group of Middle Eastern guys, that's way more scary to me. Way more scary to me than like 4 or 5 Africans. The 4 or 5 Africans, they're not looking to start. A lot of them are not looking to start any problems in Germany. They're probably happy there. They're happy there in Germany, bro. They're getting their engineering. It's a whole, and I explained to my wife. I explained to her, because she came to the United States for the first trip ever, because of me, and we met in Spain. Anyway, she came to the United States and I talked to her, and I said, in the United States, there's an issue. And the issue is that there was slavery. There was slavery. And I can't put this together, and I'm not African American. I can't speak for them. That's why I want to talk to you about this. But it's just, in Germany, I noticed that when they're coming by plane or they're voluntarily coming, they don't have that in the psyche of that they can't do it. And I think that mindset is so powerful, because my Nigerian friend, okay, he has a completely warlord personality towards, I'm going to start business. I'm going to raise capital. I'm going to get corporate clients for my business. I'm going to invent, innovate, whatever it takes. And I'm going to learn, and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to make moves. And he's doing fantastic. Whereas my other friend, Virginia, Southern boy, he has his racism towards the whites, what I mean? But he also has his racism towards Jews. And I'm literally his best friend. Literally, if he's seeing this, he'll tell you, like, I'm literally his best friend, bro. It's phenomenal. I'm like, how am I your best friend and you basically hate the Jews, bro? I don't understand it, So I do think there's something to be said about when the immigrants come. It's
different. Yeah, it's totally different, because they understand where they're coming from. So when you're coming from, I'm not going to say hell, but like, in comparison to Western civilization, yeah, a lot of sub-Saharan Africa is essentially hell. And you go into a first world country, of course you're going to be proud. Of course you're going to try to act civilized. And the ones who don't, by the way, because there's plenty of them who don't. There's plenty of African immigrants who come to Europe and do nothing but put shame on the African people. Deport them instantly. Anyone who doesn't immigrate to a country and is immediately respectful and is immediately contributing, and bringing a net positive to the people who are from the land, deport them if they aren't doing that. Okay, because if I was a ruler of any country, the only people who come in are the people who respect, not the people who hate our values, not the people who don't want the native people to yell bacon in front of another group of people. So yeah, it just makes sense. I would assume that it would be axiomatic that you allow people who want to respect your country and who want to contribute. If someone immigrates to your country from a bad country, like a third world country, and is not respecting it, they shouldn't be in there. It's really that simple. They shouldn't be there. There's no reason for them to be there. Okay, what reason? What is bringing them to be entitled to anything if you're coming from a third world country? Which is why a lot of them aren't. There's no reason to be entitled if you're coming from a third world country. And if you are, go back. Go back if you're entitled. There's no reason for entitlement. I mean, it's audacity.
Yeah. No, that's right. So here's a clip of Myron Gaines, who came from Africa, and he's explaining how Black supremacy is allowed to just go, all over, while Nick Fuentes and Jared Taylor are getting banned on Piers Morgan. So see what you think here.
It is wrong to call a 5-year-old autistic Black child the N-word. I mean, Myron, let me just ask you that question. I think this is a yes or no question. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think the woman was wrong to do what she did to that child in that park?
I don't approve of that. But what I will say is that it's very important to understand the entire context of what led us to this position. Because again, Metcalfe and Hendricks is a microcosm of a much larger problem. Earlier, we were talking about tribalism when you were mentioning Nick Fuentes' tweet. Here's the thing. Black people could be as tribal as they want to be. You have people like Tariq Nasheed, Dr. Umar Johnson running around about Black power and marry Black women and keep it in the hood and all this other stuff. But if white people assemble and say, you know what, white power, we need to keep our nation white, they're immediately ostracized and labeled as supremacists, and they get banned off every single platform. I find that interesting. And matter of fact, you went
Isn't
ahead
that the
and you
same
mentioned,
thing?
no, actually, it is the same thing. Because here's the problem with black people.
No,
You
it's
guys
not.
hold on, let me finish this. Black people practice the very racism they cry about. You guys can gather together and say Black Lives Matter, Black Power, but if white people get together and say white power, gather together, they're considered white supremacists and they get banned off every single platform. Why is that Jared Taylor and Nick Fuentes are banned off every platform for practicing white nationalism, but black people are allowed to stand every single platform getting interviews on a Breakfast Club? Explain that to me. There's a two-tier situation here where black people are able to benefit off of being racist while whites are not. And what we're dealing with right now in America is literally a backlash to this black supremacy has been able to run around unchecked for a long time, and no one has the balls to call it out. Here's the other thing I want to say. Everyone's flipping out over Shiloh Hendricks is saying the N-word.
Hey, can I respond to the point you just made, though?
No, hold on. Nobody flipped out like this when the United States was getting destroyed in 2020 because of black protests destroying every liberal city in America. So I don't want to hear it about, she made $500,000 because she said the N-word. Who cares? They destroyed billions of dollars of structure because someone got killed who was a criminal. That's the problem in America. You guys get a privilege that no one else gets to enjoy. You could be racist.
Okay.
And
all right, I have to hang on.
so-
I've got to hold it there. We've got another guest joining us. Mark, I'll come back to you to respond to that in a moment. But we've been joined now by Jacob Wells. He's a Christian founder. I agree. Myron, your last words on this.
Okay. Oh, because I never got to respond to Myron's other.
The thing with tribalism, it's a natural human instinct. Like we are literally designed to want to be in communities and want to be a part of a set of community because it ensures our survival. It's been that way since the beginning of time. So the thing is that people are typically going to align with people that share similar features. And that's why we have the tribalism we have going on right now. So the problem is it's not going to go anywhere. I think the problem is that we've had this penting up for literally decades, and this has been a response to it. You have people that are coming out and supporting someone who you guys might deem as a terrible racist, but I think it's also very important to understand how we got here, because if we're going to look at the smaller problem, we can't look at the bigger problem. And it's what I said before, unchecked systemic.
All right, Mark Lamont Hill, your last words on this.
This repeated use of the word, I think, first of all, I want to just register that as offensive, particularly as someone who doesn't identify as a member of that community and who is not, right? I think that's incredibly
I'm the definition of African American. I'm the definition of African American.
And troublesome. And to as a Sudanese American or an outsider who's using African American in a very technical term, the same way that Elon Musk is an African American, I think it is a bit disingenuous.
I mean, it's okay if you agree with, I'm just in general, like, what would you think about what
I
Myron
agree
said?
with a segment of like essentially what he said. I think it is disingenuous to allow a lot of like black nationalists, to say what they want to say, and have this sort of like supremacy view, while you do like deplatform a lot of people that don't have the same exact values. Although Nick Fuentes is not just known for his like perspective on black people, which I don't necessarily disagree with on everything that he says about that specifically, but also the anti-Semitic part and all of the other things like that. But I mean, I've never been a person that is like pro deplatforming anybody. If you have an opinion, let someone have an opinion. If people don't want to bring certain people on their shows or podcast or platform them in that sort of sense, and that's up to them as well, they should have that. They should have that choice. But in reference to social media, yeah, we shouldn't deplatform people. I think there is, in general, with the left, and this is one thing that Myron Gaines gets right, is a double standard. Right, like for example, everyone freaking out about the whole Sydney Sweeney controversy. That's silly. A white woman who happened to have blue eyes specifically said that she's proud of her genetics. Everyone freaks out. Everyone is like, "Well, black people have good genetics too." No one said they didn't. Okay, but we know for a fact that when a black woman did the exact same ad, essentially, except for the play on words, nobody freaked out about it. Okay, we can have a black woman right now do the exact same ad. No one is going to freak out about it, because there is a sense of like this white guilt, or white people have to be ashamed of this and ashamed of their heritage, and they don't have a culture, although we speak their language and we adhere to European philosophy. So, I get that point of it. Although, I genuinely think that Myron is a moron, not because of his opinions that were correct right there, but because of his other perspectives that are kind of obscene.
All right. So this is just like, I want to just, because because there's a variety of subjects here, with Myron. So before we get into some of the other stuff, I one more clip here I'd like you to see.
Sure.
1 second here.
You enslave black people to work for you, and in the same time, you talk shit about their mothers, their sisters, their aunties, their uncles, their families, and they work for you. I don't see not one white staff that work for you. I don't see the black.
That's white girl right there.
What they at? Oh, that one security.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. You know, bro, let me be honest with you, bro. This
Talk
is
to me.
this is the problem, right?
Talk to me.
You came in here and you immediately made it about race.
No.
Let's have a real
King.
let's have a real conversation here.
I watch you.
No. Black people are the most racist people ever. You came in here and immediately made the conversation about race, talking about race. You guys perpetuate the very stereotypes and the racism that you guys complain about the most. And
Fuck out of here, man.
bro,
Like I say, you a bigot.
bro. Okay.
I watch your shit.
Okay. So, well,
you disrespect black women.
yes,
You kick about your
I'm
show.
a. Here's the thing. I'm a proud bigot, man. Proud bigot, proud racist.
And
Sure.
I'm glad you said it.
Yep.
Conversation.
Because hey, somebody's got to call out the fucking monkey behavior like right now. So this is monkey
I'm
behavior.
a monkey.
Yeah, this is a monkey behavior right now. Yeah.
Man, you
Chipping
not
out.
gonna disrespect
Chipping
me,
out.
dude.
Yeah, you came up here trying to disrespect. So
I
it is
not
what it is.
disrespect you. I'm just
chipping
telling
out.
you what you preach.
Yo, you chipping out. You're not making any real arguments. You're just talking about race, blah, blah, blah. This is the problem,
that's
bro.
what you
This is the
do.
problem with niggas, bro. This is the problem with y'all. This is some nigga shit right now.
You gonna call me a nigga, but you can't tell me where you from. Are you a nigga?
Look,
where you
You
from?
watch the show, right?
Where you from?
Sudan. Family's from Sudan, yeah.
Okay, a Middle Eastern nigga.
But now it's Middle
Talking
Eastern.
shit about black niggas.
It's North Africa.
Talk about black.
It literally means the land of the blacks. You know that, right?
But you downgrade black women.
What does that
talk
have to do
shit
with
about-
anything? What does that have to do with anything? I go off behavior. When they act like retards, I call them retards. This right now is retarded behavior, regardless of your skin color. If you're a white dude saying this dumb shit, I'd say you're a retard too.
I'm
It's retarded behavior.
Because I'm telling you, you downgrade black women. I'm a retard.
Yeah.
See, you can't get one of your securities to kick me out like you kick the black bitches off your show.
What?
How you disrespect black women on your show?
Yeah.
You can't disrespect me. Because I'm a nigga walk up here, throw this drink in your face, and let you know what's up.
Oh, you gonna do that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Try me.
that won't be good,
I'm
man.
Hamothy.
That won't be good, bro.
I'm Hamothy though.
That won't be good. That won't be good. That won't be good. That won't be good.
That's hilarious. That is absolutely hilarious.
I mean, yeah, what are your thoughts on that, man?
Again, like Myron did say some true things in general. It's not necessarily degradation of black women. I mean, there is a lot of degeneracy, a lot of like the whole sexy red thing. Stereotypes are created a lot of the times, especially when it comes to perspectives of hip hop culture around the black community, whether that's, you know, female hip hop culture or male hip hop culture in general. And that's just how it is. And the rest of the video was kind of funny. And the guy was like, you know, trying to
probably understand porn.
I guess the guy was trying to like fight Myron Gaines there at the end or something, which is hilarious. And, you know, Myron did what he did best, you know, piss people off and says what he wants to say.
All right. So here's another clip here. Myron's going off on a guy who's black for defending Jewish people and blaming white supremacy. And he says some pretty nasty things.
And like you're not in the, because you guys are all some fucking idiots. You guys don't properly understand foreign policy and you really can't commentate on it. You don't even know who founded Israel. You don't even know Ben Gurion. Like you're not in the like, bro, you're not on the same cognitive wave here, man. You're too low IQ. So let's move this shit to somebody else, man. I hate when these FBAs come in here and derail. You niggas are stupid. Real talk. You guys are dumb. Some of y'all niggas need to go back to being slaves. I'm going to be honest.
Listen, my brother, listen, we just got to abolish white supremacy in Gaza. Okay, my brother?
If you know anything about history, as you know, you can look at the black last names. You'd understand that it was not the Jews that started slavery here.
This is like Ebonics.
They may have possibly funded slavery, okay, but most slave owners were white, Musty Myron, okay?
No, they were Jews. Fucking dumbass. That's the problem. You niggas are so dumb. You guys don't know.
Myron, don't go off on your racist rant. Let me finish, sir.
The white supremacy that you guys cry about all the fucking time was run by Jews. The slaves were Jews. The slave sellers were Jews. The slave owners were Jews, bro. Like, do you not fucking get this shit? Then your dumb monkey ass comes in here trying to say, oh, white supremacy. No, dude. It was the fucking Jews that ran everything when it comes to the transatlantic slave trade. But see, here's the thing: your master Tariq Nasheed is going to tell you this because his wife's.
I mean, just to jump in on this. because that comment was wild.
It's a lie. It's an anti-Semitic trope. There's no evidence to suggest that the majority. They say they toss around the 70% number. They say that 70% of the slave ships were owned by Jewish people. It's a made-up number. There's no evidence to suggest this. They also do this anti-Semitic thing where they're like, well, they were all closed on Saturday. Like there was no slave auctions on Saturday, and then because it's Shabbat. And what's funny about that is we actually do have documents that show that there were auctions and slaves were sold on Saturdays. So yeah, it's if just one way to end Myron really quickly there is what's the source for that claim? What is that rooted in? What's the data that substantiates that? And he melts. And I mean, his level of unprofessionalism is crazy. I mean, I get if you have perspectives, but him just like trying to insult people there and just, degrade and whatever it's just condescend. It's just pretty silly. Again, I would really love to have a conversation with Myron because he's like, oh, Ben Gurion, he doesn't know anything about Israel. He really doesn't. I mean, I would love, man, I'd be foaming out the mouth to have a one-on-one sit-down conversation with this guy about Israel. I'd love it.
When I met Myron and I was on Fresh and Fit in about 2022, he was not this way. And it's I think after October 7, both him and Sneeko, they went so dark with the Jewish hate. I couldn't have anything to do with these guys, man. And I just would like to add one thing here in regards to that slanderous comment, which basically is just disinformation at this point. I don't even think he necessarily believes in it. I don't know if he does. It could just
he just heard it. He just heard it somewhere. Probably just tossing that around.
I mean, arguably the largest and the longest running slave trade literally in history was the Arab Muslim slave trade, which began around the 7th century. And it literally lasted for over 1,200 years. And it literally, trafficked, I don't know, tens of millions of African people across the Middle East and North Africa. That's pretty much a fact. And it not only included African slaves, but also Europeans. And anyone can fact check that and just look at, anyone can fact check that, the Barbary slave rates. I mean, it's this notion of like the Jews did more slavery than the Arabs. Arabs did more, I would say, arguably did way more slavery than the British, the Portuguese, the Spaniards, the French, the Dutch. I think the Arabs were the trainers to the Europeans of how to do this.
They did actually. There's evidence also to suggest that the Europeans learned the slave routes around Africa, specifically with the help of the Arabs and their maps and so on. And yeah, no one really talks about the Arab slave trade. And the reason that is given for this is because, again, it's all about white people and making white people look evil. The left fails to do this thing where they hold anyone who is not white or is not Jewish responsible or accountable for anything. It's like typical leftist ideology. If you're brown and you're black, you're nothing but a victim. Okay. So when we see Rwanda invade the DRC for its minerals, for extraction, for exploitation, what happens? No liberal mentions it. When we see the crisis in the DRC, the crisis in Sudan, no liberal or leftist mentions it. Because again, the ideology around them is that if there is black people oppressing black people or infighting between tribal groups, no one freaks out. How many protests happened because of the Rwandan genocide that killed 800,000 people? Nobody protests. How many protests happened because of the Syrians who were killed by the regime of Bashar al-Assad? No one really protested about that too much. Why? Because again, if Israel or Jews aren't involved, everyone is calm and nothing really is going on in the world for these people.
So Matt, if Jews did supposedly run the slave trade, why do every basically serious historical data set, as you were saying, I think briefly earlier, and shipping record is basically saying that the Europeans and the Arabs were the ones who actually moved tens of millions of slaves, while Jews, literally owned less than 1% of slave ships.
Right. Well, I mean, again, you have to toss around lies like if you're someone like Myron Gaines or Nick Fuentes and hope that no one fact checks you. That's why you say things like that when it's obviously incorrect, when it's not backed in any actual data, because you have to just make up a lie to make Jewish people look bad. When you're far right, like someone like Myron Gaines or someone like Nick Fuentes, you have to make up lies to make a certain group or demographic look bad. If I'm going to say something about any group of people, it's going to be grounded in logic and grounded in facts. It's not going to be grounded in me just making something up to make people look bad. So yeah, it's just another silly trope that they go on and make Jewish people look bad or evil.
Clementine in the chat says Myron is a vile person who's so gross. She says that their obsession with us is so weird. All right. Richard says Kanye shouldn't be deplatformed for saying Hail Hitler. All right. Clementine. Okay. All right. So if you had to say one reason, some maybe they just hate Jews, some maybe they are getting paid. But why do you think these activists, these so-called woke right truth tellers, patriots, are ignoring the fact that 1,200 years of Arab Muslim slave trade, which was bigger, much longer than the Atlantic slave trade, and they still say, you know what, we're going to obsess over inventing this role that the Jews had that basically never existed?
Well, I mean, again, the answer is going to be you can't possibly blame someone who's brown or blame someone who's black. That's just the ideology of the left. And we're also seeing it just with the ideology of not even just leftists in general, but liberals in general, where there's a hyperfixation around the transatlantic slave trade as if it's like the most evil thing in history, as if there is no other slave trade that is of relevancy. There are no other people who went through something 10 times worse than the transatlantic slave trade. Only 300,000 people were brought to North America. And what's actually funny about the transatlantic slave trade is that it only really lasted for 89 years in America, right? People forget like that America didn't exist in the 1600s and didn't exist for a good part of the 1700s, right? It only came to exist for until 1776. So 1776 to 1865, the transatlantic slave trade in terms of under America really didn't last for too long, right? So yeah, there's a super duper hyperfixation. And what's funny is there were more slaves that were actually brought to South America, which people also don't talk about. There's not a hyperfixation on that or reparations for those people, only for the ones in North America specifically, when it was only 300,000 in North America. It's a crazy, one of the most overly talked about or overly fixated things in history. I mean, in terms of severity, if it was super duper severe or to the level of other atrocities and other things that have gone on, it would make sense. But again, it wasn't. The Arab slave trade, like you mentioned, is a really significant thing. And to be honest, it's still happening. We saw a bunch of like black people being sold off somewhere in Libya recently. But no one's going to mention it because, again, you can't make the Arabs look bad. You can't talk about the Arab conquest of the 7th century. It's so many things, not even the Arab slave trade, the Arab conquest in the 7th century. Why is Egypt Arab now? Why is Algeria Arab now? Why do they all, follow the religion of Islam? What about them being colonizers? We won't talk about it. We won't talk about that. They'll do this whole thing where they like dismissively say, yeah, I condemn it, but never really talk about it. While they go on talking about Europeans or Jewish people, because that's really who they want to villainize.
So if the United States, is the forever villain for slavery,
right?
Then why does nobody demand apologies at the United Nations from Arab countries, 22 Arab countries that enslaved Africans for over 1,000 years longer?
They know that the Arabs won't even give them a look. They won't even care. Like a lot of these Arab states like Saudi Arabia, Mauritania, Oman, Yemen, they're unapologetic. It's like the thing is like America entertains leftist ideology. They don't. If a bunch of like blue-haired feminists with keffiyehs, ever, try to ask the Arab League for, apologies or reparations for the, 7th century conquest or any of the atrocities, they'll just tell you, no, we're not going to give you an apology. We're not going to issue one. We don't have to. We don't believe in leftist ideology, and that's it. These are the same countries who are unapologetic about everything. Many of them are open theocratic states like Saudi Arabia. They would not, ever allow mass immigration of Christian people into their countries or anything like that. And to be honest, I just believe that more states should be more unapologetic. We should never aim to be like Saudi Arabia, but we should aim to be less apologetic and less, I don't know, susceptible to leftist evil ideology.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, man. It's at the United Nations, which my personal view is that the United States and Israel should exit the United Nations because it's basically just countries that hate both countries. I feel like, it's like, when there's 22 Arab countries and they're voting like in a block, it's, and then they say, oh, the United Nations said Israel's doing this wrong or America's doing this wrong. Yeah. You got like so many countries that are just natural, that just inevitably just hate the West. They just hate Israel. They hate the United States. They're going at, I don't even know why we pay. What do we get from the United Nations, bro? Like we put all this, we host the United Nations. Like literally, what do we get? Like honestly, like what?
Nothing. We really don't get anything from the United Nations. The United Nations is an absolute joke. If you actually look over the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the United Nations has really brokered nothing. Like Oslo Accords was not brokered by the United Nations. The Abraham Accords was not brokered by the United Nations. The Camp David Accords was not brokered by the United Nations. Like the United Nations has failed to partition the land. They had Resolution 181 in 1947 to partition the land into an Arab and Jewish state. The Jews accepted it. The Arabs rejected it. And even since then, they were not able to do any sort of peace deal. Like the United Nations doesn't accomplish anything. Really anything. They really almost accomplish nothing. And they're very sympathetic to terrorism and jihadism in general. So yeah, they're not taken of much seriousness.
Yeah. Clementine here says Israel is too apologetic about everything. I thought recently if there was, and I don't know the details, but if there was a mistake when Israel, I think it was Netanyahu, he said something about, he regretted it or there was a mistake. With a double tap the building, and I felt like I actually respected that he did that. And then I saw in the replies how maybe the bot farms from like Pakistan or financed by Iran or wherever the heck they're coming from, they were just hammering him. They took that to just basically hold him accountable and guilty for everything under, the weather's bad, basically, right. But I would love. And I'm willing to pay someone $10,000 right now on a Venmo or bank wire. Literally, you can hold me to it. I'm telling you, if you can send me one video where Hamas said, I'm sorry that I made this mistake in Israel. Once they say sorry about any mistake.
What's funny is like they kind of do this thing where they admit that Israel is morally superior because they hold Israel to a higher standard. Like if you're going to hold them to a higher standard, like for example, like everyone would hold their, 18-year-old, son or daughter to a higher standard than maybe their 4-year-old. And that's because you would expect more. You think your 18-year-old is more, morally knowledgeable and understandable. So when they do this thing where they have this double standard, I'm like, well, you must believe Israel is more moral than Hamas. And yeah, Hamas does not apologize for any of its atrocities. It kidnapped 2 babies on October 7th, Kafir Bibas and Ariel Bibas, and strangled them in Gaza. I mean, where is the condemnation for that ever going to be, or the apologies for that ever going to be? Never. They don't apologize for anything. They slaughter their own people that protest against them. They're a tyrannical regime. They haven't had elections since 2006. And so, yeah, it's absolutely silly. And to be honest, in reference to the hospital that you're talking about, the Nasser hospital, yeah, Israel was targeting specifically a surveillance camera that was on the hospital that was targeting IDF soldiers. And again, none of these things would even come to happen if Hamas weren't such cowards. If you're such a coward, why are you building tunnel networks under hospitals, not only just putting surveillance cameras on the hospitals, but building terror tunnels underneath them? We had Mohammed Sinwar. He was a Hamas terrorist who was unalived months ago under the European hospital in Khan Yunis. But the hospital was still fine. Israel just collapsed the tunnel that was near the compound of the hospital. So the hospital was hardly damaged, but his tunnel was near the hospital area. So like, what is he doing near the hospital area in general? Like it's cowardice. If you're resistance, if you're tough, stop hiding under humanitarian areas that are supposed to be protected.
It's interesting at the United Nations. It's possible it was, before someone says I'm wrong, it was maybe 1947. And there was a resolution, maybe a resolution 180 or 181.
You're talking about what? Are you not?
Yeah, the United Nations resolution 181.
Yeah.
It was a partition plan. You talked
Yes.
about that.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
So basically, think about it. The Jews said yes, the Arabs said no, and literally, to your earlier point, is that every year since it's been failure after failure. And the worst part about it all is that the UN at this point is a propaganda disinformation organization that's condemning Israel more than North Korea. The United Nations will literally condemn Israel more than any Arab country for the massacre of what they're doing in South Sudan. I mean, literally, or Syria before, in the past like decade, 2 decades. So they're literally no more peacekeepers. They've destroyed the credibility of peacekeepers at this point. The United Nations is appeasing terrorism. So
they have been Indian appeasing terrorism. It's a joke. It's a joke, the UN. It's been a joke for a while now. And again, I just want them to list their accomplishments in the Middle East. List their accomplishments with this conflict. What deal have they brokered? They can't give me a single one. Camp David wasn't done by them. Oslo wasn't done by them. Abraham Accords was not done by them. What have they actually done?
Yeah, and I think I'm so relieved that more and more Americans, especially in Gen Z, are starting to see the joke called the UN. All right, back to this Myron clip.
Jew. Oh, you didn't know that one, did you? His wife is Jewish. His wife's mom is a Jew, which by definition makes her Jewish because it comes from a maternal side. So of course I got to tell you that, because that's the Jewish strategy: divide and fucking conquer. This is why they're so pro-immigration. This is why they want to bring in people from other races, because they're diaspora people that thrive with multiculturalism. Matter of fact, they're the ones that came up with the stupid ass term melting pot, another Jewish term. But again, you're out of your depth to even have this conversation because you're a dumb retard. All right, so just stick to fucking, talking about white supremacy and, complaining about that. But you're too dumb to realize the people that you thought were the white supremacists were really Jews that look white. You're dumb, dude. You're really dumb. You don't even know that your master's wife is fucking Jewish. That's how I know you're a retard.
What'd you think?
I just think he's going on a schizophrenic anti-Semitic rant. Wow, someone's Jewish. Congratulations. I don't see how that's like super duper relevant. It's like, should I just mention that people are white now, or people black now, or people that are Arab now? I don't get how that's supposed to be an argument. And yeah, he's just making up things. And it's like, oh, Jewish people are the ones allowing mass immigration. Wow, is Keir Starmer Jewish? Out of genuine curiosity. Is that what he is? Is he Jewish now? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Mass immigration is being allowed by countries that simply are allowing it because of people that are in the countries that tend to be liberals or leftists who are complacent with mass immigration. It has nothing to do with Jewish people whatsoever. They're just making that up. And so just typical Myron Gaines making stuff up on the spot without citing any actual sources. Like, if he actually cited some of the things that he said, like, oh, this weird Jewish person is responsible for this mass immigration conspiracy, and it's according to this, and it makes more sense. But he's just screaming and going on a schizo rant.
Yeah, and the irony is that I would love, and I'd like to know this. Maybe I'm wrong, but there was a British writer. His name was Israel Zangwill. And I don't know if he was Jewish or not. He was a British writer. And yeah, he did come up with this phrase, the melting pot. But I think that actually is false. I'm going to go out there on the limb and say that was false. Now, if I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. But that was like a play over maybe 100 years back, over 100 years back. It wasn't a Jewish conspiracy at all. And it was basically this like immigrant, think of like an immigrant ideal, which was basically embraced by all Americans. So the very idea, the very thought that Myron took something like that and twisted it into Jewish control is the sort of propaganda you would find that would come out of an Iranian disinformation team. And another thing he said is that the Jews look white, the Jews who look white, so, or they're the actual real white supremacists. That's basically classic, like Soviet style anti-Semitism to put into the United States to break our alliance with Israel. It's I just think that I just think that this idea that you would think Myron got trained with the Soviets, bro.
Right.
Like, you know, like you would think that, and then like to your earlier point about how he said something like your master's wife is Jewish. Okay, this is that's a tactic. It's like poisoning, personnel poisoning. You're dragging someone's family or spouse into the mud, and you're doing that to discredit and delegitimize them. And that's actually how an extremist like Myron makes a debate personal when it benefits him. He loves to do that when it benefits him. And then when it doesn't benefit him, he likes to go factual. And he does that over and over. He's very predictable. He's very predictable in that way. If you just look at his content, he's super predictable. He's the king of insults. He's the king of disparaging comments to other people, except when you do it to him. You know, so you know, his intellectual argument is like childish. It's just basically propaganda designed. He's designing it to pit other minorities against Jews, and he's doing this as he's calling, as he just says the N-word in the most disparaging way possible. As the guy will do a Nazi salute with a white guy who openly uses the N-word, let's say with the hard R. I mean, I don't see where
it's next level. I agree with you 100%. It's next level hypocrisy for him to stand next to a white guy who openly says the hard R and is essentially a Yahtzee, doing the salute. It's just silly. It's like, and you said something about it. I remember you said something about him not having any shame. It's like, okay, dude, like you have to have some shame to really do the Yahtzee salute, regardless of your political beliefs. Okay, that should be something. If you want anyone to take you seriously, you shouldn't do the Yahtzee salute. It's not something that serious people do, especially anyone who wants to be taken seriously in politics. So he's just expressing himself to be a troll, which, to his credit, he is. He's showing everyone what he is, which is an unintelligent, LARPing, idiotic, moronic figure, who just says things that he heard on some random subreddit that he can't substantiate or that he can't prove, and that's it. He never struck me as an intellectual person.
Yeah, another thing, Matt, that I see Myron do, and I think he may do this in this next clip we're about to get into. He basically likes to so he'll take some truth, okay? He'll take something that maybe you'll agree with,
right?
Okay, and then from there, it's like, okay, this is like, okay, bro, like okay, we're with you on this. We're with you on this part. This is something that most people would objectively agree on. But then he twists it and goes straight into something racist. Now, I think this is maybe a good example of that. Check this out. And it's not just, and I don't say, and I'm not one of those guys, bro.
Right.
I'm not one of those liberals that says racist very easily. I'm just not. So like when 20 years back, okay, I was just something of like a middle of the road guy. This idea that I've become, like, I'm not this like far right guy at all. I'm definitely not a liberal, but it's like maybe because I am 45. I don't know. Maybe it's my generation, but to me, I grew up with Martin Luther King as a GOAT. Martin Luther King, the idea that we are all equal. To me, I do think that that's important. Now, I didn't grow up with the tranny stuff like you see as someone that's 18. I didn't. Yeah. I could imagine if you're 18, you're seeing a tranny flag as a man. I could understand how, especially when you're a teenager, how that's impressionable. I can understand that, because I was once a teenager. But to me, it's very shocking that we even have that. So to hear Myron do to see Myron do a Nazi flag salute or whatever, and to see him say the N-word with the hard R so liberally, so generously, it's just he's appealing to people that genuinely hate him, and they look at him as someone, and he says to others that they're dancing. He's the one that's dancing when he does that. Like, these people there's no respect for you, Myron. They do not have respect for you. They don't have respect for me either. by the way. But they definitely don't have respect for you, man. The same guy that's going to call me a bad name, when you step out the room, he's calling you the N-word with a hard R.
Probably when he's in the room.
Probably when oh yeah, just get into and his face. And then he smiles and does a Nazi salute.
Obnoxious and disrespectful.
Thank you.
And you've confirmed a lot of the stereotypes that have haunted Black women for decades in America. You literally have a perpetual victim mindset. You don't take accountability for your actions. Everything is you guys, instead of you taking accountability for being
So for every
rude.
action, there's not a reaction.
See, who controls the reaction though?
I sure do.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you're choosing to react the way that you do.
So by me explaining both parts, including mine, that's me taking a victim mindset?
Yes.
Or is this you being biased towards Black
See,
people?
because I could play like you. I can say that you're
You
a stupid
can't play like
fucking
me.
bitch and you've been extremely rude and I can elevate
And I can call you a stupid little dick
Isn't that
motherfucker
annoying?
who's fucking on
Isn't
a
that
Black
annoying?
woman who thinks she's white and is going to make hate her kids as well because you're a fucking demon.
Listen,
Since you want to go to
listen,
war with
you
them
fat
fucking
fucking
niggas,
bitch.
bitch.
Get
You
the
want to
fuck
go to
out
war
of
with them warriors.
Get the fuck out of my show. Get the fuck out of here, you fat bitch. Because I can match anything with you. Yeah, you are. You're easily 180 plus pounds.
You're
Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck up out of here. Get the fuck
I have
up out of here.
screenshots of me saying she's ugly as fuck, man. You know what?
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm gonna tell you that you're an ugly bitch. You look like shit.
Thank you.
You
Your mom
fucking
does too.
bitch.
And everything you're
Fuck
saying to me will
you.
bounce off of me and stick
Fuck
right back to
you.
you, your kids,
Fuck
and
you.
that bitch that
Whore.
you're fucking on.
You ugly ass bitch. You smell like onions. You smell like onions. Yep.
I declare not to
Oh,
do that.
yeah,
This show is
declare-
gonna be
no,
the
no, no.
fucking bitch.
Yeah,
Just
do
like
it.
you and
Do
your
it.
bitch.
Do
How about that?
it. Do it. Do it. Get the fuck out of here. You're Florida. You're Florida. You're stupid nigga.
Yeah, so you see I don't know if the guys if all you guys heard it what he
No,
was
I heard it
saying.
at the end. It's the thing is like it doesn't really bother me when another Black person says. To be honest, white people or Black people saying the N-word doesn't really bother me at all. I think the hard R probably shouldn't say that in general. I mean, given the fact that he's a Black man that said the hard R to another Black person, that's not really the problem. It's the fact that he was speaking to a woman the way that he was speaking to a woman. It's like, if someone's rude to you, you should call it out that they're rude. But the whole thing with getting in he's a lot bigger than a woman, obviously. He obviously escalated the situation. They were having a debate. It was one that, had some decent tension around it, right? It was intense right there. He made some claims about stereotypes, and I agree there. There's a lot of bad stereotypes that are created and perpetuated with Black women in the Black community. But the whole thing with, getting up and get the F out, B word, you don't have to do that, man. It's like you have to be a really fragile, weak person to get that upset over an argument. If it's a conversation, if you're an intellectual person, have a conversation. Just have a conversation. But don't start insulting the woman, getting up and almost looking like you want to have a physical fight with her. I'm going to say this also. He didn't have the same energy when that one guy called him out. He did not have the same get up type of energy. He only tried to get up when the guy was going to throw a drink at him. So again, Myron has some really basic simpleton points that I kind of agree with, but again, he's crashing out too much. Okay, getting in front of her face like that, calling her the B word, you stupid effing. No need for that. And I just would question what woman would want to be with a guy like that. I mean, I just feel like you'd be beaten sometime if you do something wrong. I don't know, man. Crazy guy.
Yeah, another thing about it, man, is
screen-
I don't see how that's actually uplifting his people, man. You know what I mean? I don't know, man. I think you can win over a lot of people and not be hated by your own community.
Right.
And I just feel like I've never met. I'm not Black. I don't speak for the Black community, but none of my Black friends have ever said, "Hey, you know what? I like Myron. He's not they look at him like he's genuinely when you're saying the hard R like that, man, and you when you're doing I'm sorry, man. I think there is a boundary of when you're doing a Nazi salute as a Black guy. I do think I think at that point it's safe to, because if nothing's a sellout, then the phrase sellout doesn't exist. To me, that's a sellout. It's not the person that's saying, hey, that's one thing if it's a Black guy, he's Muslim, and that's just how he feels, but he has some self-respect. Myron just doesn't have self-respect.
No, he doesn't. I mean, yeah, there is. If there is anything defined as a sellout, going so far is trying to join the far right. is definitely probably selling out, to say the least. And again, he calls himself a Muslim. And Myron, if you ever see this clip, if it gets clipped, you're not really a Muslim. I've never seen you recite the Quran. I've never seen you talk about the Prophet Muhammad in your religion or any of those different things. So I question how you're a Muslim. In what way? I know that Muhammad Hijab asked him, he clarified, you're a Muslim. And Myron was like, yeah, in what way? Is that how Muslims behave? They act like him. So yeah, it's crazy. He's as Muslim as Hassan Piker and Cenk Uygur. And those guys are supposedly Muslim, right? Two guys that never really mention their religion and know nothing. And some of them, like Hassan Piker and Cenk Uygur, call themselves non-practicing Muslims. I mean, what does that even mean?
Yeah, I mean, if strength, if power, discipline is about, control, what does it say about a man when he just completely loses composure in a debate like that with a woman? But
yeah,
then
no.
But then to your point, he is like this little. He's this, more timid when he was confronted by that guy, and that guy wasn't even in a good shape.
You know what I'm thinking of now? Imagine Amanda Seales versus Myron Gaines. Holy crap! If Amanda Seales didn't say, the whole treat me as if I was your mama, not to me, but to Myron Gaines, I know Myron Gaines probably would have. I don't know. I don't even know what happened after that. It would have been straight chaos. So yeah, he has to get calmer, not even just with women, but people in general. Like and the thing is you're right. I've never seen him crash out this hard on men. And there's something about women that just gets him to really get angry, because I don't see him like. There's plenty of people who have probably disagreed with him the same way that are men. This guy never gets this angry. When it comes to women, he wants to get up, he wants to scream, he wants to yell slurs and talk about their weight and stuff, and it's a little too much, Myron. And it seems like this energy is selectively on women. So he's an incel. And he's never going to get married. How old is he now? 32, 31, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's never getting married. Promise you that.
All right. So here's a nice. Now, bear in mind, he's older than you, so you would think he's actually wants to be a good role model,
right,
for his own community. All right. So here we go.
Put the clan hood on. See what it feels like. Yell nigger at the mirror filter a few times.
Roman salute.
Through those eye holes. Throw up that.
No. I'm joking.
What?
Okay, but go ahead.
Throw up that salute. Say, scream. Look, this is what you're gonna do, bro. All right, step by step. I want you to get a white sheet, and you're gonna cut some eye holes in it. You're gonna put it over your fucking head. You're gonna go to the mirror, and you're gonna stand in that mirror, and you're gonna say, "Nigger" 3 times. Then you're gonna say, "Mulan." Then you're gonna throw up that fucking salute like this. Then you're gonna go and talk to the girl. And trust me, see how much easier it's gonna be.
I actually think that's good advice. I'm not even.
Yeah, bro. It's gonna get you ready.
I feel like you're actually onto something. What?
Yes, bro. Do it. Get a white bed sheet right now and cut eye holes in it. And stand in the mirror and stare at it and say "nigger" 3 times. I'm telling you, you're gonna grow a couple of pubes just off of doing that.
Bro, I think you're trolling, but
I'm not trolling.
I am dead ass.
Serious, bro.
Power levels go over 9,000.
I'm dead serious. You have to get rid of that filter.
Put the clan hood on. See what it feels like.
What do you think?
I don't even know what the guy's doing. I don't even know what I'm supposed to respond to. It's like he's always never been a guy that is supposed to be taken seriously in politics. But this is next level. Dude, you're 30-something. What are you doing at this point? You're trying to get some random guy who's showing his face, who I'm pretty sure is not notable. At least I don't recognize this guy. If he actually does what they're asking him to do, it's not it could probably ruin this guy's future job opportunities or something, because it's you don't want to ever be on video doing what Myron is asking you to do. So yeah, it's just, what is the guy even doing? Trying to get random kids into trouble by trying to be super duper edgy or something? I don't even know.
All right. So
if your goal is to be 65 and sitting on,
I'm about to go into Anna. One more here. I'm going into Anna Kasparian, who's an Armenian. I think she's one of our
working for the Young Turks.
Yeah, bro.
Just got to mention that, right?
She's one of our favorites, bro. Let's just say she's one of our favorites. We're about to play. She's with Ben Shapiro. She's with your boy. She goes hard, and
love Ben Shapiro. Yeah.
I know. I know that's your boy. So I'm about to come in here. Let's Let's go in.
On a beach for the rest of your life doing nothing, that the social science tends to say that's not very good for you. You actually should be involved in your community and get involved and still have a side job and all the rest of that. But if we really believe that we can't raise the retirement age and we're never going to change that, we will go bankrupt.
You know, that super sexy debate over what contributes more to our national debt came up during my appearance on CNN last night. Ben Shapiro thinks we need to raise the retirement age to 110 years old because Social Security, of course, is bankrupting the country. But I disagreed. I actually blamed a different reason for our growing US debt. I focused on military interventions, endless foreign aid, and involvement in conflicts abroad that, you know, we spend a lot of money on and don't have pay-fors baked into. So I'll make my case a little better after we hear more from Ben Shapiro. Take a look.
All the talk about cutting at the margins, you know, whatever Doge is doing, that's not going to touch the real driver of the systemic debt in the United States. Women are living to 85 if you make it to 65. Men are living to 83 if you make it to 65. That's 20 years on the public dime.
But you're talking about, hold on. When you're talking about the government paying, you're talking about Social Security,
Yes.
which is people's money.
Well, it is not the money you paid in. It's
the system that they pay into.
Well, no,
You're
every
calling-
paycheck
Okay.
stub.
Yes. But believe me, I pay a lot.
I know I pay into Social Security. I don't know about.
I promise you,
but-
the amount that people are taking out is not the amount that is going in, which is why we are going bankrupt.
Okay, so I've been advised by Ben to look at a chart of our national debt. And I'm gonna do that in a minute. But before I do, Cenk, what are your thoughts on what Ben Shapiro had to say? People are living a little longer, right? And it is true that the amount of revenue that goes into the Social Security Trust isn't enough to cover the benefits, right? We do borrow a little bit every year as a result of that. Now, there's a fix to it, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so there's a lot of misdirection here, guys. I'll talk about the retirement age after we fix the bare minimum fixes that are super easy, actually. Okay, so number one, when they say, "Oh, look, we're raising the retirement age," not because we want to take more of your money and make sure that you can't take that money out and give it. We want to give it to rich people and tax cuts and corporations and subsidies and foreign governments. No, it's because we want you to have time to get involved in the community. That's not why. That's hilarious, okay? You can get involved in the community any way you like and bless your heart. And I heard that discussion you guys had and I encourage it, right? But that has nothing to do with what age we should set. Because if they move it from, let's say 65 to make up a number, 69, right? So those are 4 years you would not get benefits. That is stealing from you every single year, a significant amount of money. It has nothing to do with what you're gonna do at the community center. And then when he says going bankrupt, wait, what does he mean? Does he mean Social Security going bankrupt or the budget itself, the entire country going bankrupt? Because those are two separate issues. As we're about to tell you, fixing Social Security is actually very simple.
Like shockingly easy.
Yes, and that's not going bankrupt at all if we do that one easy fix. And then in terms of the country, that's a larger conversation and one I'm thrilled to have. And we should have all those conversations before we get to moving the retirement age.
Okay, so I responded to what Shapiro said there. So I wanna go to that moment and then we'll break it down further.
I just totally reject what you just said about how we're going bankrupt due to Social Security. Really, you don't think like the trillions of dollars we've spent on wars in the Middle East might have something to do with that?
It's not even
our
remotely a
national debt.
percentage of what we spend on Social
Our national
Security.
debt shot up significantly after 9/11, after we started invading countries in the Middle East.
You should look at a chart.
Now we're at 30.
So it's kind of hard to hear because we're talking over each other, but he said at the very end, you should look at a chart of our national debt. And I took his advice. So let's take a look at a chart of the national debt and see where it shot up. Oh, wow, would you look at that? Using data from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, this chart shows how US spending, or I should say the debt, really shot up exponentially beginning in the early 2000s. Gee, I wonder what happened then. So the last time the United States, by the way, had a budget surplus, not a deficit, not a debt, budget surplus, was when President Bill Clinton was leaving office in 2000 and George W. Bush was coming in. So obviously Social Security wasn't bankrupting the country. We weren't dealing with debt at that point, and Social Security was already, a well-established, program. So what changed in the early 2000s? What could it have been? Well, here's Senator Bernie Sanders. This is a speech he gave on the Senate floor in 2012, basically taking us down a trip or taking us on a trip down memory lane. Take a look.
President Bush assumed office, and within a few years, we were fighting not just one war in Afghanistan, but another war in Iraq. And many of the deficit hawks today, the people who tell us, oh, gee, we've got to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and nutrition and education. We got to cut. When asked to pay for those wars, they had nothing to say. Nobody knows exactly how much these two wars will end up costing, but the guess is that by the time we take care of the last veteran 70 years from now, those wars may run up over $3 trillion, and we did not pay for them to the tune of 1 penny.
If you don't understand, what are your thoughts so far? And we know where we know where this is going. By the way, it's going to be her blaming Israel. But
well, no, of course. I mean, one, we only give Israel $3.8 billion a year. That's the money that we give to Israel annually. Like, for example, apart from that's through the foreign military financing program. The 500 million of that they have to use obviously on their missile defense system. The rest of that it's essentially a grant, which they have to use on U.S. weapons, which creates American jobs. So I know she's going to bring that up. The rest of it is like sales. We have foreign military sale, different between foreign military financing and foreign military sales. We sell weapons to Israel, which is also good for our companies. We want to sell weapons. We want to produce American jobs. So that's just that. In reference to the national debt, or no, not the national debt, but in reference to Social Security, benefits have only increased since that time period. Like that's the thing that she's failing to understand. Like benefits for Social Security have only increased since 2001. Since the early 2000s in general, benefits have only increased. And if we actually just take into consideration Social Security itself, how much we've spent on Social Security, and how much we've spent in general in reference to certain conflicts, it's nowhere near the same. So she just fails to understand into it. And like Ben mentioned, if you're putting more into something than you're ever getting out, then it is going bankrupt. That's literally the definition of bankruptcy. You there's just a lot being put into Social Security, right? And so if you're not getting enough out, then there's a general problem there, right? You're losing money consistently. There has to be some sort of change to that, which they still haven't offered.
Yeah, the thing is that when she talks about this stuff, it's the way they're like building the story up, and the fact of the matter is that you don't even need to have like an economics degree to know that Israel has almost nothing to do with our national social. And
those wars, I'm sorry to interrupt. Those wars had nothing to do with Israel. Lawrence Wilkerson, by the way, he worked for the Bush administration during the actual invasion of specifically Iraq. Right. In terms of the talk about the invasion of Iraq, he literally said that the Bush administration was warned by Israel not to invade Iraq, and that Iran was the actual problem. So the idea that Iraq was because of Israel is silly. Iraq didn't really give two F's about Israel. They are more worried about the actual threat at the time, which was Iran. So someone who actually worked in the British administration said, no, Israel intelligence was telling us that Iraq was not the problem at all. So I guess she's going to blame Iraq and Afghanistan on Israel too, which is also the silly part. But let's see what she says.
Yeah, well, just real quick here. I like how you pronounce Iran. You pronounce it correctly, yeah. And just to add for people who are not American, our Social Security system here, it's not a savings account. Okay, it's literally like a pay-as-you-go system. So basically, today, in our workers in the United States, they pay something called payroll tax, and that money immediately goes out to pay today's retirees. Okay, so if you retire, the check you get, it isn't your money saved, so to speak. It's money right. That's coming in from workers that are like 18, like Matt, and that's why as people have longer lives, hopefully, but maybe they have fewer kids, the system is just getting strained. So you have more retirees, and then you have fewer workers paying into it. Okay. Now she's about to go into how basically, this clip, or basically all the problem America has is Israel, to this Armenian lady who's bitter that
working for the Young Turks, by the way. Just got to make sure I remind everyone that.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
She's Armenian. She's Armenian, and she's talking about oppression because Israel is this big bad oppressor, but she's working for the Young Turks. Okay. The same Turks who, annihilated a good amount of her people during the Armenian genocide. So interesting.
Yeah. The thing is that it's intellectually dishonest, right? So I did a stream with a smart lady, and she said that. She said it's intellectually dishonest, and it's true. And it's because the thing is she's upset and bitter that Israel has an excellent relationship with Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is a Muslim country, legitimately a Muslim country.
It is.
And it's not the only majority Muslim country that has a good relationship with Israel. And that's a fact. So just one last thing here before we get back in is that Israel, to every American who's gotten duped, whether you like it or not, Israel, no, it does not control U.S. payroll taxes. It does not set U.S. budgets. And it definitely doesn't issue what's called a U.S. Treasury bond. So blaming Israel for Social Security or debt is like blaming your neighbor because you maxed out on your own credit card. She's just basically doing propaganda and to avoid facing, basically what's actually disinformation.
He's saying, look, we just keep engaging in conflict abroad, starting wars in the Middle East. There are no pay-fors. We are literally borrowing money to do this. And that is why when you look at a chart of our national debt, you will notice our national debt skyrockets beginning in the early 2000s. This is not rocket science, okay? It really isn't. And so I'm about to get to Scott Jennings in just a moment because, he heard me talk about invasions in the Middle East and it got his dander up about Israel. So we'll get to that in a minute. But Cenk, any thoughts?
Yeah. So I want you guys to understand how much they're thinking of robbing from you. So average payments for the average American from Social Security every year is about $24,000. So if they move the retirement age by 4 years, that means they're going to literally take $100,000 that every American would have been paid if they retired at 65, and they're going to take it from you and make sure the government has it. Now, if the government spent it well, that would be one thing, right? But what does the government spend it on? Well, Anna's right. So how much did the global war on terrorism cost, for example? $8 trillion. So one of the tricks that Ben Shapiro is doing in that appearance is, well, Social Security is a huge part of the budget. Yes, but a huge percentage of that has already been covered by the amount we put in through our checks throughout our entire lives. I hate scams, especially the ones that target seniors, and Medicare's chock full of them. Between commission-hungry broke
guys talking about scams as he's doing this, the irony. Go ahead, man. What do you think?
Again, you're almost getting tired with this. He's just saying more silly things. I mean, this whole perspective. Generally on Social Security, again, it's a dying business. It's just dying. We are putting a lot more in than we're getting out. There has to be something done about this. And people like Ben also mentioned this point is that people are getting a lot more benefits than they ever worked for in reference to Social Security in general. So increasing the retirement age, although that's not what anyone wants to necessarily see, makes the most sense in terms of how we're going to sort of manage the budget and how we're going to make Social Security less of a dying scam at this point to our national debt.
All right, here we go.
You get all this pyrotechnics to try to trick you into thinking it's your fault and you should retire later instead of us starting endless wars.
And this type of conversation is so frustrating to have in the format that we were having it in because it's a quick segment on CNN. We got to go to break. There's 5 people on the panel, 6 if you want to include the host, Abby Phillip. And so it's so easy to trick people in the way that Ben Shapiro can trick people, right? And so that's why I'm having this conversation now, because I want people to understand what we're talking about and what that little trick and conflation is from Ben Shapiro and people, conservatives like him, who want to do away with Social Security entirely. So what also stood out to me was Scott Jennings immediately jumps in, because when it comes to our taxpayer dollars, obviously Israel is entitled to it, and how dare you bring up the Middle East? So let's take a look at how that exchange went down.
If you think it might rain later, then all you need is this bearskin heavy storm rain jacket.
You could see this is what she's been. This is what they've been warming it up for. Here we go.
Everything is
Honestly, these foreign.
What?
Everything is the issue with Israel at this point. With this, like everything that we're gonna blame Social Security, national debt, everything. Apparently, she's gonna blame on Israel. How much does she think we give Israel?
Exactly.
Let's play it though.
Exchange went down.
Honestly, these foreign conflicts have a lot more to do with our national debt as
hell they
opposed
do
to
by
us
numbers. That
paying
is
into
just
the
untrue.
Social
You
Security
think
system.
Israel is a bigger portion of our budget than Social Security?
I think we spend way too much money on military aid for foreign countries.
You think
Absolutely.
Israel is more
Do
than
you
Social
think
Security?
that Social Security is more of an issue compared to how much money we just shell out for conflicts abroad?
matter of expenditures and math,
that
yes.
both entitlements and defense are a big issue.
Okay, so I would prefer not to fund a genocide. So there's the moral issue with that, obviously. But I also have a problem with providing military aid to a country that had an economic surplus as recently as 2021. How do you justify that?
Yeah, I want to get into more detail there. So another misdirection here. So Scott Jennings is trying to say like, oh, that $3.8 billion we give Israel every year is very small compared to the slice of the budget that's Social Security.
And just for the record, Scott Jennings was not wrong, because when you look at the foreign conflicts in Israel aid, the war, yes, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan added trillions into the debt. Yes, I'm not gonna. This is how these propagandists take some truth. That's actually true. However, Israel's whole aid package, this is a fact. Israel's whole debt aid package for a decade equals about maybe 2 weeks of U.S. Medicare spending. Okay. You know, it's like, bro, like, give me a break, bro. Give me a break. And then she says something like, oh, I don't want to fund a genocide in a place like Palestine where their population is growing. First of all, I understand that's moral. That's definitely not an economic argument. It's just like she's posturing. She's posturing and dodging the numbers. So you can debate foreign policy all day you want, Anna, all day you want. It doesn't, math is math. 1 + 1 = 2. That's just the bottom line. And Social Security stress, whether you like it or not, Anna, it comes from demographics, not a tiny, tiny country called Israel. Man.
Right, and I agree with you. One, you're totally right. Actually, what's interesting is that Gaza has experienced more births than deaths. There's been about 84,000 something births in Gaza since the start of the war, and there has been about 62,000 deaths. And the 62,000 deaths, by the way, which comes from the Gaza Ministry of Health that is ran by Hamas, includes both combatants and civilians. So, yeah. Speaking of that, right? So the idea that this is a genocide is just wrong. There's really no evidence to suggest it. I don't want to derail into the genocide argument necessarily, but the fact that these two can always bring every single political debate or every single political or economic issue onto Israel just says a lot. They are so obsessed with Israel. It is crazy. I mean, I see Cenk Uygur yell and scream and almost pop a vein every single time he's talking about Israel. It seems that Anna Kasparian has been trying to do exactly the same: yell, scream, and almost pop a vein. Yeah, just typical screaming matches from both of them and freaking out and not understanding math.
Yeah, so here we got in the comments section, we have good old, let's see here, Richard. He says, you don't get to decide what is and isn't basically true because you're Jewish. Okay, just so you know, Richard, aka Mustafa. Okay, welcome back, Mustafa. I'm glad you're back. The thing is that, and I know that for you, when you're in those group chats where people are just saying the wildest, silliest things, with low IQ, that it's just fine. There's no fact checking. But if you want to put the numbers on the table, like a big boy, Mustafa, AKA Richard, Social Security, okay, I'm going to talk to you like you're my child. I'm a father, so I'm going to talk to you, Mustafa, like your child. Now, that's me being condescending, admittingly, because you've been trolling me now for like an hour and a half, bro. All right, so I'm going to troll a little bit, all right? Respectfully, you know what I mean, bro? Like, you've been trolling me hard. Like, every stream, you troll me, Mustafa, all right? So it's just this. It's just that Social Security costs the U.S. about $1.3 trillion a year. Okay, so think about that. $1.3 trillion a year. Okay, just understand the math of that. Okay, now look at $3.8 billion a year. That tiny, tiny number is tiny, tiny Israel. That is our friend that gives us a lot of power and a lot of influence in the Middle East. That's less than 1/3 of 1% of Social Security's size. A rounding error, literally like a rounding error in the federal budget. You could please come back with math, but just trolling me, man, saying things like, I'm making things up because I'm Jewish. Bro, like, what, did I make up 1 + 1 = 2, you dumb?
Yeah, the guy in the comment section, Richard, whatever you are, man,
Mustafa.
just Mustafa, learn some basic mathematics, please.
Thank you, man.
Again, the overwhelming majority of the Social Security budget has already been paid for by you through all the taxes you paid. So that's misleading, number one. Number two, that's not the only thing with Israel. We also gave them $20 billion in the middle of the genocide. Overall, in inflation-adjusted numbers, we've now given them $310 billion. That's point number one. Point number two is we had no business in Iraq. They did not attack us on 9/11. In fact, they were an enemy of al-Qaeda. But at the time, Israel and the neocons said it was Israel's number one enemy, and that for our security and safety, we had to attack their enemy, who was actually against al-Qaeda and killing al-Qaeda at the time. Okay, so now they say we have to attack Iran, and
this Turk says this after 9/11, where an openly Arab man, Osama bin Laden, literally was the one who attacked us on American land, and now he's saying that that's not for our protection. Say that to all the people who lost their lives. All right, Sink, you're an unappreciative Turkish migrant. You embarrass the Turks, bro. You embarrass the Turks in the West.
We did attack Iran, and they say we have all to attack all. We have to do all the entire global war on terror. Okay, wait, that's another $8 trillion on top of the $300 billion. And now, as I said, the Department of Defense has gone from about $800 billion in recent years to now close to $1 trillion a year. Now, it's not just Israel; it's also defense contractors that benefit from that. But now you see how "quote unquote" defense of "quote unquote" America is, when in reality it's about offense for Israel, has cost us literally trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars
with no pay force.
Right, while they're trying to distract you with, it's just $4 billion a year, right? That's the tip of the iceberg. They're trying desperately to make sure you don't see the iceberg.
Well, so 1 minute it is because of Israel. 1 minute it is because of Israel. So when one part of this argument, it is because of Israel. That's the problem of Social Security. Our national.
I just need to clarify a few things. So the $20 billion that he's specifically mentioning is not just aid; it is literally foreign military sales. There's a difference between foreign military sales and foreign military financing. The $3.8 billion is foreign military financing. Half of that has to be spent on the Iron Dome. So that's $500 million of that $3.8 billion has to be spent on the Iron Dome. So $3.3 billion has to be spent on American weapons, and that is a grant. We oversee what they use that money on, and it specifically has to be used on American weapons to produce American jobs. That's just the $3.8 billion annually. And the rest, like I mentioned, is foreign military sales. So that's how much we approve to sell to Israel, right? Which again is only a net benefit towards us. And it's funny how he's like lumping all sorts of numbers together. He's like $8 trillion and lumping it with Israel. One, Israel did not start the war in Iraq. I've already debunked it. Lawrence Wilkerson, someone who actually worked for the Bush administration, openly said himself, that Israel warned us against fighting Iraq and said that the actual issue was Iran. Okay. So like him doing this thing where he knows more than the people in the actual Bush administration, with all due respect, Cenk Uygur, I'm not buying it. Okay. I'm not buying it, Cenk Uygur. And the $310 billion, yeah, that is total aid that we've given to Israel. That includes foreign military financing, and that also includes foreign military sales. Again, for him, it is convenient when he just lumps in money. And he added the $8 trillion. Is he really just saying that Afghanistan was also due to Israel? Is he going to, pose the conspiracy theory that Israel was also responsible for 9/11 now when Osama bin Laden openly came out and said that he was responsible? Is he going to say that as well? And he's acting as if we didn't accomplish anything. We did. I mean, sure, there was issues with Afghanistan specifically, right? But in reference, for example, to defeating ISIS, ISIS is very much weak. ISIS had its maximum territory expansion in 2015 was significant, and now it has been significantly crippled to where it only really operates in Western Sub-Saharan Africa to any significance, right? So that has been a true success. And in reference to Iran, the IAEA came out, a day before Israel's attack that said that they are enriching to 60% uranium, enough to make 9 atom bombs. Israel didn't say that. Iran said that. And what's funny is when Israel actually attacked Iran, it was day 60 of what, you may ask? Day 60 of the 60-day time period that Trump sent a letter to Ayatollah saying, essentially, you have 60 days to make a deal, or else things are going to get hectic, or else Israel might do a preemptive, attack of some sort. It was essentially insinuated, and Ayatollah ignored it. He didn't want to, sign any sort of a nuclear deal. So Israel took it upon its own hands to obviously strike Natanz, Isfahan, Fordow, and do military strategic strikes against the IRGC, who you've openly said is very much oppressive. No one likes the IRGC. No one likes him. Ayatollah is a ruthless dictator that oppresses the people, has only made things worse in the country. And obviously the U.S. also came in and, basically double tapped the nuclear facilities over in Iran. Okay, because with all due respect, it's not even just Israel. Okay, like Iran, when Ayatollah holds these press conferences, he says death to America and death to Israel, and he says that he openly wants to destroy both countries. Okay, and he says that is a policy because his people chant it in his little cult, meetings or assemblies, and he says it is a policy. Okay, and then we had Iranian state media, stroking a nuclear toy weapon. So with all due respect, call me crazy, but maybe we shouldn't allow that country to have a nuclear weapon. To me, it seems pretty much axiomatic, but for them, it's like this complex, oh, really? We're just fighting wars for Israel. No, we aren't. Okay. And no one is getting drafted for that. We're just bombing the nuclear facilities with our bombers because we don't want this country. There's so much more with Iran. It's not even that they're just trying to develop nuclear weapons and they're an authoritarian regime and they're awful. The Saudis don't like them. Iran has been literally funding the Houthis in Yemen, which are a Shia-backed organization that has caused a famine in Yemen since 2014 with their war. Okay. And Israel has done us another favor with annihilating basically a significant part of the Houthis prime minister, by the way, which he also lied about. Cenk Uygur. Cenk Uygur also lied about that. He was like, oh, the prime minister of Yemen was annihilated. No, Ahmed al-Ra'awi was the prime minister of the Houthis, a designated terrorist organization that literally messes up global maritime supply routes with their attacks. Those leaders were annihilated. They are Houthi terrorists. So yeah, it's just consistent lying. And obviously the Iranian regime, Hezbollah, Hamas, they are the global state sponsor of terrorism. So for them to do all of those things, fund these terror proxies that are consistently messing things up, and then for us to then allow them to have nuclear weapons is just next level stupidity.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that when he also lied when I think he said that Israel said to America to go into Iraq. Basically,
lied. I already debunked that. Lawrence Wilkerson said that the Israelis did not want Israel to invade Iraq at all, and they suggested that the issue is actually Iran. So again, Cenk Uygur doing what he does best in lying. He doesn't back it in research. Like if he just looked it up, the Houthis are maybe different than the actual recognized Yemeni government that exists. Maybe that's not the prime minister of Yemen, it's the prime minister of the he doesn't to him it's too complex. He can't just Google and research and find out basic things for himself, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, it's just if anyone remembers Ariel Sharon, he was a former prime minister of Israel. he literally warned Washington that it was Iran, not Iraq. So if we're just talking about back then, right? We're talking about back then. They didn't say that Saddam Hussein was not dangerous. I think many, even like the Gulf Arab countries, would say, yeah.
Well, everyone would agree. It's not like it's like, is H-man a bad person? Like dangerous is one thing, but an actual invasion policy is another thing, right?
Yeah, and that's why I think that it's just to say that the United States had no agency, that U.S. Congress had no agency, the Bush administration had no agency, the U.S. and British intelligence report agencies had no agency. No one had any agency, and it was a tiny country called Israel that had all the agency and told them complete ownership to vote, and they're going to control, and you're going to go into a country, which if we could probably pick, it would definitely would not be Iraq. It would have been Iran. So it's that's why I say, like, I don't even think this is necessarily he's stupid. I don't think he's stupid. I do not. I just think he's a liar. I think he's a liar. And it's just point blank. That's just what it is. He's doing disinformation intentionally because he thinks Americans are stupid.
Not only because the size of the iceberg, but also because they're trying to get you to work more years of your life to pay for those wars for Israel.
Think about how disgusting this argument is. Like, the more I think about it, the more enraged I feel, right?
I mean,
shameless. They're so shameless. More wars for Israel. It's like we've already debunked like all of the wars that he's specifically talking about, but it's like shameless.
All our money, bro. So let's just back to that earlier number. So the tiny amount of money that Israel gets, right? And I was being generous, Matt. I was being generous. I'm like, you know what? The Jews, Israel, they're getting a few billion. I was being generous, but then you more accurately said, hey, you know what? A lot of that's aid, which is true. A lot of that's aid, and a lot of that actually creates American jobs.
Right.
And another thing, other countries, including the Chinese Communist Party in Germany, they literally want and buy Israeli tech. This is the irony. Why Anis hates Azerbaijan so much? I mean, and Israel, she hates Israel so much is because they're giving their tech to Azerbaijan to fight the Armenians. So just think how many countries actually, that's how good the technology is. Now to say, oh, every inventor in Israel that invents any technology, it's because the United States gave them money. No, you don't control everyone's innovation.
I also want to say something real. It's really interesting. Like, who do you think, takes the most amount of like aid in terms of like in terms of Palestine? Who do they take the most amount of aid from? It's the United States. The United States is the biggest contributor of aid to Palestine in reference to the Gaza Strip, in reference to the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. The U.S. supplies them the most. And they're, by the way, Israel, obviously, I gave them the argument of how Israel actually benefits us, right, in so many different ways. And now I want to switch it over to Anna Kasparian. Obviously, she's not here, but it's not reciprocal when it comes to Palestine. They are nothing but a welfare state. They just take, right? They don't build American jobs. They don't give us intel. They don't give us anything. What's interesting is she mentions wars. On September 11, 2001, when the Palestinians heard about the September 11th attack, it was broadcasted. We saw what they were doing. They were passing around candy and celebrating. When America had one of its saddest days, okay? Passing around candy and celebrating. If you're going to do this whole thing where it's like, oh, we only want to send aid when it's reciprocal. One, with Israel, it is reciprocal. But two, you're not keeping up the same standard when it comes to Palestine because they give us nothing. They're a parasite. They just eat everything up, cause conflicts by invading countries that are going to destroy them, obviously, and are going to obviously beat them in a war, complain, cry genocide, cry for constant, continuous aid, and contribute nothing to the world. What is the Palestinian invention? What's the Palestinian tech hub? And it's like, oh, Gaza is destroyed. I wonder why. It's because 72% of the Gazan people, according to the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, agreed with the October 7th attack. The majority of them don't want the war to end on the stipulations of Hamas surrenders and gives up all of the hostages. Okay? The same people who voted in Hamas, right? The same people who are okay with, the only terrorist attack that beats 9/11 is September 11th. And guess who it was done by? The so-called Palestinians. Okay? So if we're talking about contributing to the world, the Palestinians have done essentially nothing, especially in the last decade or so, but cause problems, but cause issues, but cry genocide, but take, and give absolutely nothing.
It's interesting you say this about the Palestinians, because not only did the Palestinians do this to the Israelis, like shameless jerks, psycho beasts, not only did they do this to the Israelis, but there's a reason why Egypt and Jordan and Lebanon and other countries don't want to take these Palestinians.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to explain to some people that don't quite understand. In the Iran-Iraq war, okay, after all the billions of dollars the Iranian regime gave to these Arabs to go fight their wars, you know what side the Palestinians took when Iraq was doing industrial scale gassing, killing, murdering Iranians, who were, a lot of them were Muslim. Here I am talking about Muslims. Right. The Palestinians took the Iraqi side because the Palestinians like the Iranian cash. They like the Iranian cash. But then they basically spit in the Iranian people's face as they're getting gassed by chemical attacks, let's say, by Saddam and the Iraqis. So now, today in Iran, you got a mass problem with water, having clean drinking water. So many people don't have a job. So many people, and if they do have a job, they don't make enough money. Okay. So it's a disaster, because in 1978, Iran was a wealthy, rich country. It's a fact. It's a fact. It was a rich majority Muslim country. It was a fact. And it had a good relationship with Israel. It had a good relationship with Germany, England, and the United States, I would say. Overall, it was a good relationship. And then this green-red alliance took over, and it destroyed it. So
Ayatollah took over. I mean, we've had, the videos from Iran prior to the Iranian Revolution. Like, we've seen all of the videos and all of the things. Like, women look free, they look happy, men look free. And I'm not saying everything was perfect under the Shah. No one's saying everything was perfect, but in comparison to how things look right now, we had the woman in Iran who was beaten to death by the police for not wearing her hijab properly. She had the hijab on, she was not wearing it properly, and she was beaten to death by the regime. Okay, so things are insane. And you mentioned the Palestinians in reference to Iraq, so I just want to mention another thing. The Palestinians not only took Iraq's side on that, but they also took Iraq's side in the Gulf War. So Kuwait had about like 400 to 300,000 Palestinians living there at the start of the Gulf War. And when Iraq invaded Kuwait, what ended up happening is that the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, took the side of Iraq and supported Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait while the Palestinians were there. So as soon as Kuwait was liberated, guess what they did? They basically expelled over 350,000 Palestinians from their country. Just kicked them out. Plain simple. Sent them all to Jordan. Sent the majority of them to Jordan. Okay? Kicked them out. Why don't we ever hear about that? I'm just waiting on the, crying, the chants, the condemn Kuwait, Kuwait, where is your reparations? I'm still waiting on that day, because it seems to me that every single time it's Arabs doing something to Arabs, no one has something to say, right? No one has blamed Kuwait for doing that. No one has blamed Gaddafi for kicking out 35,000 Palestinians, because the PLO was not acting in his favorable way. And again, I'm going to still ask for when the time of crying will start for that. But again, listen, in order for people to care about things in the world, Jews have to be involved, which is why I don't take these people seriously.
All right, there we go.
Because what they're effectively communicating here is our problem here in the United States is all these elderly people collecting their entire entitlement benefits.
Nice little.
Okay, not the fact that we've been shelling out trillions of dollars for global wars, in many cases on behalf of Israel, with no pay-fors. That is so sick It's so sick that like it's ingrained in the minds of these pundits on the right and some on the left as well, meaning the Democrats in positions of power, that like, no, I mean, our government shouldn't work on behalf of taking care of its constituents, of its people, of its citizens. Your resources shouldn't actually be used to enrich your life, to protect you in your old age, so you're not out on the streets with nothing. It's just, we should focus all of our energy on what are we getting out of those wars again?
Absolutely nothing. Nothing that benefits you. So back to the mines, back to the assembly.
Basically, what they're doing is they're saying, why doesn't Israel and the United States exit the Middle East completely, and we'll let a Turkish Ottoman Empire take the whole thing, and then next they can move west, reclaim the Eastern Europe, the good old Ottoman Empire, sink who's Turk first, and that's it. That's how we should do, because Americans, we're getting nothing out of it, and let's let China have, help the Venezuelans with narco terrorism, and let's let Brazil get taken over into full communism with the Chinese. Let's let Chinese agents train with special operators in Mexico. Let's also have Chinese people in Canada, and let's just keep encircling and circling and circling America, conquer Europe. But hey, because we're not getting anything out of it. We're not getting anything.
This is what they fail to understand, is that it's a simple geopolitics, is that there's like three main global superpowers, like China, Russia, if you really consider a superpower, the United States. We have to be involved. We have to. It is either they take control of not even just places like the Middle East in general, but Western Sub-Saharan Africa or Africa in general. Either they get their influence, they create their new future access, or we do. This is what people are failing to understand. This whole isolationist game doesn't work. Okay, yeah. Isolationism is what literally caused World War II. That's what caused World War II, was this isolationist game. If you're not involved, it is only going to make matters worse. And apart from Israel for a second, we did sign a $142 billion arm deal with Saudi Arabia as well, which is a really good thing, obviously. Making sure that we're selling our weapons to countries that are willing to buy it at a very expensive price, that are very wealthy, like Saudi Arabia, creating American manufacturing jobs, especially in the military industrial complex, always will be a good thing in general. So yes, we would rather us have our influence over those areas than, for example, China, than, for example, Russia. Okay, Russia, which very much backs Iran. So this whole perspective of let's just give up on foreign policy, on influence, and let anyone do anything that they want to. No, I don't want to see Israel, especially a land that is very holy for Christians, Jews, and Muslims, and so on, to be ran by any sort of Muslim caliphate. I'm sorry, but I don't want to see it. I do not want to see it. And I don't think any Christian would want to see that either. Okay? I don't think any Christian would rather see Hamas governing that area than, for example, Israel or the Jewish people. If you look at Christian persecution as well in the Middle East, it is the highest for almost all of the Arab states, almost all of the countries in the Middle East, except for Israel. We had, Christians that are being bombed in Syria, so on and so forth, which, by the way, is never mentioned by Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian, because Muslims don't ever do anything that is bad, or there is no sponsor of terrorism, amongst Islamist ideas at all. So they never want to mention those things. So yeah, it's silly. I mean, the reason why the support for Israel exists is because it's an outpost of democracy in the Middle East. It best resembles our values, upholds common law, gives us intel, buys our weapons, holds our same values. That is allyship. Allyship is who best resembles our values, who best acts. Like, if we were in the center of, if we were where Israel was in the Middle East, we'd act the exact same way. There's no, like, if we had Gaza, they attacked us, we'd attack the exact same way. If we had a country that, like, for example, Iran, that did what it did in terms of enriching to 60% uranium, according to the IAEA, we would have bombed their nuclear facilities. We're not going to allow a country. Do you think America would ever allow a country that is as tyrannical as Iran to develop nuclear weapons anywhere near close it would be? Absolutely not. So just think about it that way. If we were Israel, we'd be acting the exact same way, no significant difference whatsoever. And of course, we're going to support the Jewish people over any Muslim fundamentalist country.
I want to say, I want everyone to understand the Chinese Communist Party They're building these fancy AI tech startups and companies, but they're not just literally building these businesses, because the Chinese Communist Party is literally building the largest military the world has ever seen, with the most advanced or the most state-of-the-art technology the world has never seen. So if you look at an annual report from the Pentagon, and it basically talks about how Beijing now has the biggest navy on our planet. So China, the Chinese Communist Party's navy has more warships than the US Navy. By the way, they also have like 1 billion more people than we do. Yes, 1 billion more people. So now they're building, the Chinese Communist Party is building hypersonic missiles that can fly 5 times faster than the speed of sound. And by the way, we're not done. They're also practicing drills to take Taiwan by physical force. So just imagine they're going to go in there with physical force, and Taiwan's important to our economy. That's a whole other subject on the economics of that.
Right, right, exactly.
Right. So this is not just, this is not,
SMC, yeah.
yeah. So this is the thing. This is now Sync might say, oh yeah, but what are they doing for us? They're helping our fucking economy, bro. So the Chinese Communist Party
The chips,
is literally funding ports, mines, as Matt was saying. They're doing 5G networks around the globe.
Well, let's just stay out of it. Let's just stay out of everything, according to these isolationists.
Yeah, and let's let the Chinese Communist Party go in, take Latin America, take the Caribbean even. Why not? Let's let them take Africa, and then let's let the Chinese Communist Party just continue and expand on building spy bases in communist Cuba, which, by the way, is only less than 100 miles from Florida. And then also, by the way, U.S. intelligence has already confirmed that Chinese police outposts are already operating illegally in places like New York, or let's say Toronto. So like, how are we overlooking all of this?
Again,
Because Sync said, Sync the Turk first. He says, what are they giving for us anyway? I mean, by the way, how often did they mention how much money we give to Ukraine? So if Ukraine can get 4x the amount of money as Israel in 1 year, let's say 2023, 4x the amount of money, let's say 3x the amount of money. Do they mention it proportionate to the amount of aid? No, because you would legitimately think, the way these people talk,
right,
that Israel's taking 80% of our budget.
I love you. No. You're totally on point. It's like the way that they speak. It is like they're taking 80% of our budget, because it's like, it's wild. And we've went over the data. We've went over the numbers. We've proved them wrong in almost every single way. But if they're truly worried about foreign spending, how much we are spending in terms of supporting foreign countries, why don't they mention Ukraine? Where are the Cenk Uygur, sweating, screaming matches for Ukraine because of how many billions we've tossed to Ukraine? Where is that? And by the way, just to mention, we do give Egypt about $1.3 billion every single year. And we've given them, I think, $51 billion since 1979. I still have not heard any of these two people yap about that, because Egypt is also on the foreign military financing program. So it's like, where you made a good point, man. Like, where is the crying about Ukraine? There should be. Where is the screaming rants from Cenk about Ukraine? Where is that? So it's not about the money. Let's be honest. There's something deeper here. Let's just get to it. You don't like the state of Israel. I'm not even going to call them anti-Semitic, although they both obviously are. You just don't like the state of Israel. Let's have that conversation. Stop this whole pretending. And they have to try to connect it to the American people. They're like, they have to like fearmonger. They're taking your money. They're taking your money. They're taking all of your money. Because they have to do that to try to get the people connected, because truly, it's beyond that for them. It has nothing to do with the money for them. So yeah, it's just what it is.
Yeah, one last thing here on the isolationism is, I think you and I are aligned on that, man. It's like, look, if America, why should America care about what's going on in the Middle East and Asia? you're truly missing the big picture here if you think that. Okay, and I say that respectfully, and I just want to just say one more reason why. Okay, if the United States were to do a complete pullback, let's say, and let's say Matt's right. Let's say Matt's right and you're wrong. And now you're wrong, but maybe you just didn't think about this. Okay. Matt's saying, hey, you know what? If you don't do it, someone else is going to fill in the gap. He just said that. Right. And let's just I want to give one example. Okay. One example is more dictators like that communist Maduro will get help maybe from a country like China, and you're going to have more narco terrorism. And so let's say that's tied to Chinese chemicals like fentanyl, and more Americans are dying from overdoses, and that's an issue. I would say that if you look at how many people are dying from opioids, how many people are dying, and if the Chinese are sending drugs to our country, that's not Zionist. There's no imagine if the Zionists, bro, were sending these drugs that the Chinese Communist Party and the narco terrorism from Venezuela is doing on the Mexican border. These people would lose their mind. These people would lose their mind. But if it's the Chinese Communist Party sending drugs into our country, and let's say 300,000-400,000 Americans die in a year, who gives a shit? Who cares? But if one misfire happened with the USS Liberty, some mistakes happen in war. Could you imagine if there was one mistake and 100 Americans were to die, which is a tragedy? That's going to be talked about way more than the Chinese Communist Party, let's say, contributing to maybe 300,000-400,000 Americans dying from these drug overdoses as they're training special operators and, let's say, snipers inside of Mexico.
Tren de Aragua specifically is a designated terrorist organization. This is what people have to understand. The move from Trump to specifically designate them as a foreign terrorist organization is so they can do things like airstrikes, especially in international waters. There has to be a deterrent for this. This whole thing with, no, we'll just capture you, and then we'll send you off to prison. No, Cenk Uygur just spoke about taxpayer money. He just cried about taxpayer money. I don't think you or anybody watching in the audience wants to spend millions of dollars because again, in terms of the life terms that they're going to serve, it's going to be millions of dollars. We don't want to spend millions of dollars on those terrorists. They're terrorists. That's what they are. So it's easier to annihilate them as they're trying to deliver narcotics to our country to poison our people. It is really that simple. Okay. They're a designated foreign terrorist organization, and we're going to treat them like terrorists. No softball game that the liberals want to do, because the liberals always like the softball thing where they're like, no, be nicer to them. Just capture them. No. They're a terrorist organization. They earned that categorization, right? They just went from a gang that would infiltrate us and deliver narcotics. That is state sponsored by Maduro. But no, we're going to take them seriously. They're a foreign terrorist organization. You put narcotics on a ship and try to poison the American people, you'll get bombed. Simple as. And we should stand on that specifically. Don't allow these liberals to gaslight us and try to say that, no, you don't do that. No, bomb them. It's a big deterrent. I bet you that a lot of the people from that gang are now going to be like, holy crap. Whoa, that's what they're doing now? Yeah, that's what's happening now. So again, it's strength through force, okay? Ever since Trump took over the border, ever since that's happened, in general, less people have been motivated to try to infiltrate our country. And I wonder why, right? Because there's a deterrent there, okay? You're not going to just be allowed to infiltrate. The military is there now. Things are being taken more seriously. Yes. Okay. The more you just tell people no, instead of this wishy-washy, I don't know, I'm inconclusive, the better things generally are. Okay. So in reference to the Tren de Aragua gang, yeah, if you try to deliver narcotics as a foreign terrorist organization, boom. It's like a kill cam also. It's great that we have to post every single one of those airstrikes that happen on those terrorists.
Here we go.
Lines, you're not allowed to retire. We need more wars. And even if you say, look, guys, I don't know if Iraq was about Israel and Iran. I bought into, oh my God, it's so scary. They both have weapons of mass destruction, even though they both literally don't, right? And et cetera, et cetera. But I bought in. I love Israel and I want to defend. So you're going to work and you're going to make all the rest of us work 2 more years, 4 more years, et cetera, to pay for all those wars. But again, put aside Israel. What do we need the wars for? Why do we need to bomb a ship that coming out of Venezuela like we did the other day, starting up conflicts for no reason?
Really?
Why are we talking about Taiwan and China?
Well, how does Cenk Uygur generally think about the American people? Like, does he care actually about the American people at all? Does he have an ounce of care? What does he mean? No reason. They are a designated terrorist organization that is trying to poison the American people by delivering narcotics.
Bro,
What does he mean? No reason. Starting conflicts for no reason.
Bro,
I mean, imagine how bad of a leader this guy would be. It's like, no, you want to deliver narcotics into our country? Just go ahead. We're not going to bomb you. That's fascism. We're not going to even stop you because that's also fascism. We're not going to place a $50 million bounty on Maduro, who is state sponsoring this, because that's fascism. You know, we're the United States of America, but we should be weak. We should just allow countries like Venezuela that are an absolute, shithole, with all due respect, to do whatever they want, to infiltrate us however they want, and to exploit us however we want. This guy stands for nothing, which is why the best that he does is scream and freak out during conversations because he can't actually engage in an actual conversation. So
I want to say, Sink, I'm actually I'm a little bit flattered that your hatred. I don't take it as personal that you hate Israel now. I'm a little bit flattered, man, because at least you're a little bit consistent in your full-blown communism. Maybe I was wrong, like your support is like literally like a commie, man. Like you're literally on the side of communism, dude. You are like, I think that is a more accurate description of what you are than a terrorist. I truly believe this, man. Because you are consistently communist. You are consistently communist, but you are talking as an American inside of America, and I hope you're deported, man. All right, I truly do. I truly hope you're deported.
And all these conflicts abroad, we need all these bases. So in the beginning, when Trump was talking about ending the wars and maybe pulling back some of our bases and bringing people home, that resonated.
It did.
And it helped him win in 2016. It definitely helped him win in 2024. He comes back in, and all of a sudden, we're talking about Department of War instead of Department of Defense. We're talking about, no, you need to work longer because we haven't started enough wars. That's insane.
See how he does the freak out thing?
None of these countries are about to attack us. It's all...
What?
You see how he does the whole thing where he's like, "Rrr, rrr." That's typical Cenk Uygur stuff, where he starts freaking out when things get hard for him. But let's go into the whole thing in terms of pulling out wars. Trump has never said that he's not someone who wants to enforce things and be someone who does things through power. Again, it's peace through strength. I'm gonna play a game with Cenk Uygur. Okay, you name me the 2 Nobel Prize nominations that Joe Biden received in terms of foreign policy from 2 countries. Oh, wait. Oh, there is none. I'll give you 2 countries in reference to Trump. Cambodia, nominated Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. And guess what other country did it? Pakistan nominated Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Donald Trump has not only been able to negotiate a deal between, obviously, Cambodia and in reference to Pakistan and India, he was also able to sign a deal in reference to the DRC and Rwanda recently. And that was also done in collaboration with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. So again, like, do we really want to talk about foreign policy? Trump was able to get the Abraham Accord signed, have more Arab states open up relations with Israel, creating even more peace. Do we really want to talk about foreign relations, Cenk Uygur? Like, I just hope. I'm still waiting for the day I get to finally debate this guy. It's only a matter of time. But man, it's like, let's not talk about foreign policy, Cenk. Let's not. It's really not your subject. Trust me. Especially if you're comparing the 2 presidents. I mean,
yeah, I want to say shout out to everybody, man. We're like, from what I see, the number 2 most have the stream with the most viewers. So thank you, everybody. I know we're talking about some hard stuff here. Yeah. And I'm very proud to say I feel like we have a pretty smart audience, because I know we're going over some tough subjects here. And I just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope more of you jump in on the chat. You're a little bit of a shy bunch.
I know we got people watching on X as well, not just YouTube. So shout out to everyone watching on X as well.
Yeah, on X right now, we're on X right now. Yeah, man, we're like literally like the number 2 that I see biggest, most viewers. So Tess Cater says yes. What Tess Cater says, Chunk Yogurt is such a hateful man.
Chunk Yogurt. No, listen, I love the nicknames. I mean, I'm just waiting. Has Trump released his nickname for Cenk Uygur yet? It has to be. That's a good one. Chunk Yogurt. That's a perfect nickname for someone like him. He just, this is Cenk Uygur. I'm pretty sure everyone that's watching probably agrees with me. Every single time he's dealing with a debate that is like somewhat controversial or people disagree with him, it's a screaming match and scream. We are sending all our money to Israel. Israel's our enemy. It's like the guy is constantly screaming and freaking out, and he looks like he's gonna pop a vein.
Yeah,
I'm worried for his health. I believe for the sake of Cenk Uygur's heart, he should just relax. He should just calm down. Jeez, man.
May get a heart
it's
attack.
insane. Man. This guy's he's dedicated to hating this country.
That's right. That's right.
Made up. And on top of that, guys, the last part of the misdirection is, so we promise you guys that, hey, what's the simple fix to Social Security? All you have to do is raise the cap.
Yep.
Right now it's at around $170,000.
$176,100.
Yeah. So at that point, you stop paying into Social Security. If we just raise the cap so everybody just pays into Social Security no matter what their income is.
Let me rephrase that. So affluent Americans pay more of their income, right? Or the cap is lifted. So more of their income qualifies for Social Security taxes. Okay, these are the wealthiest people.
I like how they're contradicting themselves.
Most American workers are not making $176,000. Let's keep it real, right? So the vast majority of American workers have the entirety of their income taxed for Social Security. But if you're wealthy, right? If you're making above $176,100, any dollar you make above that amount doesn't get taxed for Social Security.
So they are paying.
What were you gonna say, brother?
No, I was gonna say it's funny how they're contradicting themselves. On one hand, Cenk Uygur is saying that no matter what, you should pay, no matter your income, you should pay into Social Security, and Anna Conspiracy is saying, you know what, let's actually remodel, let's actually change. Like they don't even have their own idea set out yet, so it's they're all over the place.
A lower percentage of their income for Social Security than you are, which is unfair. And so it's simple fix. You fix that, and Social Security has a surplus. We can actually give you more money once you retire, right? So they don't want to do that fix. Why? Because it affects people making above $176,000. And that is Ben Shapiro's core constituency. That is the Republican Party's core constituency. So they want to help rich people. They want to start more wars. And by the way, look at all the garbage that they make us pay for. See, I'm starting to have sympathies. I know you are for libertarians, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they say, okay, look, it's one thing what the proper tax rate should be, right? And that is a good and worthy debate. But it's another thing when whatever the tax rate is, 20, 40, 60, you take it and you don't give it to any of us. You don't help the American people build bridges, schools, et cetera. What you're doing is $35 billion a year in oil subsidies. Why?
Boo.
Why are we giving subsidies to the richest companies in the world? And then you have interest on the payments are gigantic. So we got to pay down the debt so that we stop wasting $870 billion a year in interest payments. And then of course, tax cuts for the rich. And so they just added another $3.4 trillion to the debt. Why? Because the rich had to get even more tax cuts. And all of this has got to be paid for somehow. And how are they going to pay for it? Back to the mines, back to the assembly lines.
By robbing you.
Yeah, American taxpayers, you have to work till you die to pay for all the money going to the wealthy, to corporations, and to foreign governments. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings.
What'd you think, man?
Again, I don't know if these guys have ever looked at like a graph on this, like that the wealthiest people pay the most amount of taxes. Like that's just a fact of the matter. Like the most wealthiest people in America pay the most in. I obviously in reference to people who make less. Many of them don't even pay anything in federal taxes, but in general, with people who make less, like obviously Trump in reference to no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, like all of those different things.
Canadians.
Right, and even no tax on, they mentioned Social Security is all good things for people who make less in general. But this whole anti-wealthy people nonsense, it's like the wealthiest people are paying the most in taxes. I don't know why you're trying to punish them so badly. But it's I mean, just typical talking points from people at TYT.
Hey Matt, I know we've gone, man. I was thinking, like, I know we've gone a while, man. If you got like another little bit longer, man, we go over it since they talked about the Venezuela, the narco.
Yeah, let's go over this. I mean, I am a little tired, but yeah, let's go over this first. Yeah,
let's
and
do
then
it.
We can summarize then.
Thank you, brother. You got good work ethic here, bro.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
Man.
Tren de Aragua. We're going to dive into what we know so far, how we got here, and then what to watch for going forward. Starting out, this is strike footage released by the White House showing the kinetic strike that did eliminate those 11 terrorists. President Trump released a statement saying, quote, "Earlier this morning, on my orders, U.S. military forces conducted a kinetic strike against positively identified Tren de Aragua narco-terrorists in the Southcom area of responsibility. TDA is a designated foreign terrorist organization operating under the control of Nicolas Maduro." That's the president of Venezuela. "Responsible for mass murder, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, and acts of violence and terror across the United States and Western Hemisphere. The strike occurred while the terrorists were at sea in international waters transporting illegal narcotics heading to the United States. The strike resulted in 11 terrorists killed in action. No U.S. forces were harmed in this strike. Please let this serve as a notice to anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America. Beware." And that actually hints at what the Trump administration might be trying to get at specifically around this use of military force. Now, President Trump, in a press conference just a few hours ago, hinted that this took place, saying, "We just blew a drug boat out of the water and there's more to come." Let's give that a listen.
When you come out and when you leave the room, you'll see that we just, over the last few minutes, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat, a lot of drugs in that boat. And you'll be seeing that and you'll be reading about that. It just happened moments ago. And our great general, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's been so incredible, including what took place in Iran, knocking out potential nuclear power for a long time to come. I think within a month they would have had it. We didn't do what we did. But he gave us a little bit of a briefing. And you'll see. And there's more where that came from. We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country, coming in for a long time. And we just, these came out of Venezuela and coming out very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela. So we took it out, and you'll get to see that after this meeting is over.
Now, it's worth mentioning how we got here. And I think the best way to describe this is slow.
There we go. Nicolas Maduro, good old commie. And here's good old Sink and Ana Kasparian telling, "Hey, you know what? Why don't we just avoid the world?" And we were talking about the narco terrorism. Here we go. How is this when we have so many Americans that are so many Americans whose lives are destroyed? If we were not to care about this, is this smart? Could we just apply the same commie logic and say, you know what? If we were to listen to Ana Kasparian and Sink, the Turk, if we were to listen to the Turk and Ana Kasparian, we would basically let the Chinese Communist Party take over Latin America. Why not have 2 million Americans die from drug overdoses that the Chinese Communist Party helps bring in? Why don't we let the Turkish Empire take over all of the Middle East, go over Eastern Europe? Why don't we let the Chinese Communist Party take over Taiwan? Because only we are creating the problems in the world, according to the Young Turks show.
No, 100%. This is. I agree with your perspective on this. It's like America is the only evil entity in this case. America is the only one doing evil things. America is the only one spreading terrorism, not the CCP, not Iran, not Russia, no one else. America is the fault that our problems. And again, when it comes to Tren de Aragua and this specific attack, totally justified in international waters, not in Venezuelan waters whatsoever. They are a designated foreign terrorist organization. They are trying to poison the United States people. And obviously Trump ordering an airstrike like this sends a message. Like, the most important thing is not even that these terrorists were unalive and they don't get to bring narcotics. That's a significant part about it. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is it sends a message, a clear one, okay, to anyone else who tries the same. Okay, like I said earlier, anybody who sees that is part of the Tren de Aragua, they're going to be like, holy crap, that's what's going on? An airstrike just like that, right? It sends a message to the Venezuelan government that has obviously been sponsoring this. Even under the Biden administration, they called them out for sponsoring this. So no, it sends a clear message. It's an act of strength, and the data is going to validate this. And like we're going to see that there's going to be a significant drop of narcotics entering our country, especially from Venezuela or from any of these terrorist organizations like Tren de Aragua. We're going to see a significant drop. Why? Because there is an act of force, right? There is a deterrent. You have to deter these organizations, these terrorist organizations. You can't just say, please stop it. We'll capture your little boat.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You have to be strong. You have to give them a major league deterrent. And I get that the leftists and liberals, they think this is fascist because you can't show an act of force against terrorist organizations without you being fascist. I guess when you were trying to destroy ISIS and when we did airstrikes on ISIS, we were fascist too. It's like everything according to them is just fascist, authoritarian behavior. There is no such thing as peace through strength. There is no such thing as sending a message in order to protect the American people. But again, they don't care about the American people. They want unvetted, undocumented immigrants to be able to free roam the United States, be here for as long as they want, grape as many women. I can say rape actually here. I'm typically used to like TikTok terminology, so sometimes they say Yahtzee when it's Nazi and rape when grape when it's rape. But they want to allow anything to happen, right? It's like there's no sense of like when do these leftists or liberals like ever actually take the time to worry about national security, worry about the jobs of Americans, the livelihood of Americans, and any of these different things? They cry when the White House posts these like videos of these rapists, illegal immigrants that were rapists being deported. They cry about that, and I'm like, that guy actually was a rapist. You do know that, right? It's like it's weird. They have this sense of love for everyone who hates America with a sense of like hate with everyone internally in the country because they're supposedly these evil imperialists. But yeah, it's silly. Totally justified strike, sends a clear message, and trust me, there's going to be a lot less of those boats coming through.
All right, here we go.
Slowly than all at once. I mean, there has been a lot of tension between the United States and Venezuela, especially under the Maduro regime. But recently, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a noticeable uptick in this activity. The U.S. Department of Justice a couple of weeks ago increased the reward for any information leading to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro to $50 million. This is the president of Venezuela. And earlier today, I saw it, not sure if this is new or not, but another bounty or reward issued for the Venezuelan Minister of Defense, Pedrino Lopez, at $15 million. Now, a lot of the rationale here is that this is an illegitimate government. And you'll see that mentioned a lot recently, kind of the framing from U.S. government officials. They don't really talk about President Maduro, but anytime his name comes up, they say he's the illegitimate leader. He is a terrorist, head of a narco cartel in Venezuela. Again, much easier to take military action or possibly topple a regime if that leader is not a democratically elected president, but a narco terrorist, right? And it seems like that's been a lot of the framing in recent weeks.
What I will say with respect to Venezuela, President Trump has been very clear and consistent. He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. In Maduro, it is the view of this administration, is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this cartel who has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into the country.
Now, to be fair, there are a lot of questions around Maduro's most recent election, and there's a lot of countries around the world, including the United States, that do not view those results as legitimate and say that he stole the actual election.
Work today is
Doesn't that sound familiar,
We're
by the
all
way?
working in too
Doesn't
many
that sound a
disconnected
lot
apps,
familiar,
and
like
it's
what the
killing team productivity.
commie liberals like to do, election stealing? That's
Now,
like what
we
they
also had-
that's what they specialize in.
And under the Trump administration,
right? I mean, that's just basically like, hey, you know what? Why don't we let why don't we let in 4 million people into the United States, and then after we let them in, let's let them all go to the voting booth and just vote. No ID needed, and we know.
I heard something about, I think one of the members in the House complaining about the National Guard being anywhere near the polling booth, or any sort of or ICE. Was it ICE? I believe it was specifically ICE. ICE being at the polling booth. So like some person on the left was complaining about that. And I'm like, why would you complain about that? Who would be afraid of ICE at a polling booth? Because you have to understand the philosophy behind it. You're not allowed to vote unless you're a U.S. citizen. Being a permanent resident doesn't allow you to vote. Being someone who is on here on a visa does not allow you to vote. H-1B, whatever it is, does not allow you to vote. So the only people who would be worried about ICE being near any of those polling booths would be people who are not supposed to be there.
Yes.
And so why are the liberals mentioning ICE being at the polling booths as a bad thing, unless they are trying to get illegals to vote? I'm just curious. Like, I'm just trying to understand the frame of it. It's like, why would you be afraid of ICE being at the polling booth if everyone who's going to go there and vote is a citizen?
Fair point.
Just a genuine question, but yeah.
That's a fair point.
So this was a little bit earlier in his time in office. He did label the Tren de Aragua group as a foreign terror organization, and this was a significant move. It was not just this group out of Venezuela, but a lot of groups in Mexico as well. Generally, what that does is open up a lot more options for the United States to go after these organizations. It's not just military force, and there's definitely going to be some debate about the legality of carrying out a strike like this. We'll likely to see more of that in the coming days, but it also opens up a lot of possibilities within, economic realm, trade, financial sanctions, DOJ, and more. So moving Tren de Aragua to a foreign terror organization really kind of set this up to where we are right now. What we've seen in recent days is a significant U.S. naval deployment into the Caribbean, talking at least 4 guided missile destroyers. That's a lot of firepower. A submarine, at least one submarine, multiple aircraft. We've got MQ-9 Reaper drones. We've got reconnaissance aircraft. We've got the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group. So roughly 2,200 Marines. My understanding is around 800 of those are a set landing party, that carry out amphibious operations. A lot of that has led people to the idea that this is too much for what the White House is referring to as simply a counter-drug operation. And they've been very consistent with that messaging. But a lot of people, understandably so, look at this strike package, this graphic here put together by Ian Ellis over on X, and they say that is not what you need to pull over drug boats. There's more at play here. And there have been a lot of statements made recently from opposition members in Venezuela, understandably so, but also some people in major publications here in the United States saying it's time to liberate Venezuela. General Flynn, the former U.S. National Security Advisor, just 2 days ago, said it's time to make Venezuela great again, talking about toppling the Maduro regime. And it's understandable how you might get to that as a possible goal when you look at the strike package heading south. So on the one hand, we have people arguing that all of this is going to be designed around a possible invasion or regime change. Personally, I've said it does not look like the size force that would carry out a land invasion. These Marines can do a lot of damage, but they're certainly not taking over Venezuela with just the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready.
I mean, just to try to explain here, guys, in my view, when we have the Chinese Communist Party that's building the largest military bases, let's say in the world, they want to build the largest military in the world, largest navy in the world. When President Trump, and he's doing a fantastic job overall, he's not perfect, but he's doing a fantastic job, way better than a lot of presidents we've had, right? So when you think about it, why would we put so much effort into a counter drug operation like this? Because think about it. This is not just about, 40 guys in Louisiana dying of a drug overdose, is it? It's about the Chinese Communist Party. It's legit about the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party, if Qatar is what the Zionists actually are, to damaging America, if you were to just follow me on this train of thought, the way they say Zionist, if Qatar is in actuality, because they spend so much money on our schools, they just pour money into our country, right? So and they're only like what, 300,000-400,000 people. How the heck does 300,000-400,000 people, even smaller than Israel, let's say, controlling and have so much influence and
that oil money, baby. That
Yeah.
oil money.
And Matt, by the way, own more of like London, maybe, or more than maybe even the royal family. But anyway, besides the point, I just want to get back to the point here, and that's this: is that if the CCP, so let's say, so follow me here, the Qatar is what the Zionists are, but if you want to go even further, the Chinese Communist Party is the big daddy. They are the big daddy of the whole thing, conspiring to destroy the American empire and bring in a Chinese empire.
Just to mention, so Trump actually did indeed pass. He signed an executive order specifically on this issue in reference to transparency of donations to our Ivy League universities or higher level education in general, to address this specific issue. Because what people fail to understand is, while they're talking about like Jewish and Zionist influence in general, there's been billions of dollars, I think now, that America has received, like in terms of American universities has received from Middle Eastern countries like Qatar, the Emirates in general. There was a study that was done on this by the NCRA, and they found that universities that accepted money from Qatar had a 300% increase in anti-Semitic incidents. Okay. And by the way, Qatar doesn't have like the money that AIPAC, has is nowhere near the level of money that, Qatar has spent on our universities. Nowhere near. Like AIPAC has spent $65 million in lobbying since 1998. Okay. Qatar has spent over $1 billion at, our universities like Columbia, like Harvard, like Stanford, and so on. Okay. So the Arab influence over our universities and why people are becoming so, pro-jihad and pro-Palestine, so like things like that in general, is a lot because of the money that is flowing in from these universities, from these Emirate states. And that is something that no one is really willing to address. But again, I'll continue to mention those things.
And another thing too, man, is that when people are talking about how when Cenk, the Turk and Anna Kasparin, they keep talking about how like we shouldn't get involved. What are they doing for us? I'll give you an example. When the Chinese Communist Party suppliers, point blank, are in Venezuela, where these communists are, and they're manufacturing, I just want to emphasize for the new listeners too, they're manufacturing these chemicals right there in Venezuela, and that's used to make fentanyl and meth. Okay. Now, those chemicals are shipped to Mexico. Then those cartels in Mexico use them, if you look at the map, to mass produce drugs that pour right over our American border that kill Americans. And you cannot blame the Zionists for this. This is literally Chinese Communist Party, guys. This is the Chinese Communist Party. Okay. They're killing Americans, drug overdoses. Okay. With a weak border that the Democrats want to basically maybe make it even easier to come in, and hey, at least they can vote them in. Now, these cartels and these other networks are using drug profits to do what? Buy weapons, human trafficking, and even terrorist, operations here in the West. And this is just facts. So when the Pentagon and the DEA are reporting this link, it's real. It's serious. So like when President Trump's going after this, why the heck wouldn't you go after this? But according to Cenk, the Young Turks show, hey, why are we doing this? Why should we care about the people dying from meth and fentanyl across America? Maybe because they're not liberals. I don't know. Like, how could he possibly say that, dude? But he does. He does. Because you know why? Because to him, it's more important that the Turkish Empire takes over the Middle East, kicks out American and Israeli influence, and the Chinese Communist Party takes over Latin America and helps that communist in Venezuela and helps that communist Lula in Brazil as they're attacking a family man like Bolsonaro. That's how.
A group. The middle ground was lethal strikes. And that's likely what we just saw play out here. And something to keep an eye on is if this is the first or the only that Trump carries out here in the near future, all the way over. And part of those strikes could possibly be into Venezuelan territory. This one notably in international waters. We should watch to see if they go after TDA organizational facilities inside of Venezuela itself.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it.
I gotta get the commercial stuff, man.
All the way over on the other side is the idea that this is just
YouTube
bluffing.
Premium.
At this point,
Yeah, I
I think we
know.
got to rule that one out because we have seen actual military action taken. Now, in terms of the Venezuelan response that we have seen so far, they have put out multiple statements, including just yesterday, that they are prepared to fight and ready to defend against any U.S. military strikes, which at this point technically has not happened. And we'll get into that when we're talking about what to watch for going forward. But this strike took place in international waters against what the United States has labeled a foreign terror organization. So it's not against the Venezuelan government, and it was not inside of Venezuelan territory. There might be some gray area there in terms of how Venezuela responds. But nonetheless, we have seen their Minister of Defense say they are ready. He's talked about the deployment, or said he's deployed about 15,000 soldiers to the northern portion of the country, deployed naval assets, and said a massive drone deployment has taken place off their coastline. And one thing to keep in mind with those drone deployments is we do know that there is a historically close relationship between Venezuela and Iran and Russia. And what we've seen Iran export, Russia hasn't really exported this to my knowledge, but they certainly would be, they've talked about doing it to Venezuela. But the export of these long-range strike drones, like the Shahed coming from Iran or the Garand-style drone coming from Russia, those may not necessarily put the U.S. mainland at risk, and that's not what I would expect Venezuela to target right out the gate by a long shot. But they could possibly push back U.S. forces in the region, especially those sailing south in this strike force, if they find themselves in range of some of these long-range drones. We don't know the Venezuelan drone capability in that regard quite yet. We have seen Venezuela call up quite a few of their citizens. They have really kind of advertised that they've gone to the streets, calling up people that are ready to defend their land again against an American invasion that Maduro is saying is in the works. But that does kind of lead us to what to watch. So anyways, we are seeing a significant movement by Venezuela, mostly at this point prepared to defend their territory. Haven't seen much in terms of pushing out and actually going after U.S. forces that are still operating in international waters.
So just back to earlier, we were looking at the stream. Anyone who's just joining now, of the Young Turks, Anna Kasparin, and Young Turk Shink Yaguar. He says basically, what are we doing in these other countries? And he's saying basically, why are we in Israel, or I guess Venezuela or Taiwan? And here you are, we're dealing with a country. If we were to not get involved, like President Trump just is getting involved, this narco terrorism. So should we just let Iran and Russia take it? Should we let Chinese Communist Party take it? If China's buying this Venezuelan oil in defiance of U.S. sanctions, and he's keeping a communist, an illegal, a dictator, a vicious thug like Maduro in power, does that count? Does it count if the Chinese Communist Party is providing surveillance tech? And
it goes to say that, these leftists and liberals in general are super duper worried about our actions and how evil we are for oppressing people. And our oppression is essentially trying to prevent narcotics from reaching the American people and poisoning the American people to death. That is it. Us trying to deter, state-sponsored terrorism through the, influx of narcotics into the nation. That is the crime. And if that's the crime, then we'll take whatever the punishment is. If that's liberal tears, if that's leftist tears, whatever the hell it is. It's just silly. Like I have leftist fatigue when it comes to this. It's fatigue at this point. It's like, when do they ever critique the actions of any other of these countries? Are any of these other countries wrong for absolutely anything that they do? Or is it only like Israel bad and America bad and CCP and every other country is doing phenomenal? And it's like I know that when Cenk Uygur ever does mention China, it's always in like this sort of like praising way, like, oh, China, the wage of people have increased there. Well, the wage has increased for every people everywhere, almost essentially at the same rate. And it's like, does he mention what happens to Muslims in China, specifically the Uyghur population there? Is that ever going to be mentioned by him? Of course not. How dare he ever mention? Because he has to like go through the contrast between they're my little socialist utopia kind of, and then go through the whole, well, they are attacking the Muslims, but he's not going to ever mention that. He's going to say real silent about that. Although they care a lot about oppression, I'm pretty sure, right? Care a lot about oppression. It's interesting how they operate. I mean, the CCP has to do no propaganda in reference to you externally. It's just that, these leftists do the propaganda for them. So it's kind of works out in their favor anyway. Again, America is not having problems because of outside forces. It's having problems because of internal forces, internal members of the country who just seem to just really hate the country in every single way.
Yeah, the thing is that like when Laura Chin, for example, she came back on X and she talked and she makes a picture of her family, of her kids. I think that was a little bit shameless and cringy, honestly. After what may have been going on. I mean, she's literally on a Russian website. Now, someone might say, "Oh, what's wrong with Russia?" And I look, I get it. Some people, I love, when I was a bachelor, I love Russian women. I have nothing against the Russian people, man. I'm just talking about governments here. We're just talking about politics,
right? Of course, governments.
So I'm just talking about the Russian government, okay, the Chinese government, the Iranian government, and to say that and I'm not racist towards any of these. My father's Iranian. Okay, he wasn't Jewish. I got Jewish from my mother, not my father. Okay, so to be clear, I do not hate Chinese, Russian, or Iranian. However, that said, to say that Russia, China, and Iran are not in the good old boys club and they're like rolling like a crew, like a gang, is ignorant. It's ignorant, and the fact that they're coordinating, mapping out, planning how to test the United States, and what's going on in Venezuela. To be clear. It is not just about smuggling some drugs. It's sending a message to Beijing. It's sending a clear message to Beijing that, we know what you're doing and we're not going to let your proxies, whether the proxies are Iranian or Russian or CCP or your Pakistani bulldog, we're not going to let you create a foothold.
Right.
Where we don't want you to create a foothold to test us. And
no, I agree 100%. And I would want to further this discussion, although I'm getting really, really tired.
No, go ahead, man. Yeah, it's late
in a while. But no, this has been a phenomenal discussion in general. We've went over Israel, some things in reference to Palestine, Cenk Uygur, Myron Gaines as well, and the crazy things he's had to say recently. I mean, all of this has been great for everyone that has been able to tune in. I applaud you. This has been an awesome conversation, and I'm glad that you gave me the opportunity to come on this and conversate. This has been great. I mean, I'd love to come back as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Matt, it's been great to have you, man. We went over 2 hours and 40 minutes, man.
Right.
It was a doozy. So where could everybody find you, man?
You can find me on TikTok at Matt Nuclear. You can find me on X at Matt Nuclear with 1 T. And my YouTube is also at Matt Nuclear. That is where I am. So yeah.
All right, just one quick second here. Clementine says, terrorists can do no wrong in the eyes of leftists.
That is absolutely true.
Testcater, one more comment, says one of the hardest problems is that so many countries produce drugs, Peru, Colombia, etc. Such a difficult thing to slow down importation into the USA. Last thoughts on that, Matt?
No, for sure. Which is why the U.S. should work harder to prevent the importation of drugs into the U.S. by any means, and why we should continue to build deterrence. We have to make sure we deter these countries from doing what they're doing. And what Trump is doing is sending a message. And I'm promising right now that the importation of drugs is going to significantly drop with massive, actions like this and massive, expression of power of we're not going to just allow this to continuously happen.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoy. Please share the stream, and the podcast is on Spotify too. Thank you for tuning in, and
thank you for having me. Thank you,
Matt. Just 1 second here.